Chapter 1361. Buzz Buzz. The massive ice palace shook. The ground shook, and divine light shot everywhere. The incomparably gorgeous and luxurious radiance originated from the central area of the palace. The sky was filled with dazzling runes that looked like stars. The crisscrossing ancient runes were like vines of light extending outwards. After that, the restless energy shook. A dusty aura was slowly released. Countless symbols covered the center of the palace. An ice palace that was hundreds of meters high was glowing with a strange, soft light. Walking up the majestic stairs, in the middle of 2 rows of magnificent stone pillars, the gate of the ice palace was pushed open by an invisible hand. White mist gushed out from the palace, showing its mysterious and long history. This was the center of the entire palace city, surrounded by towering high-rise buildings. On the spacious field in front of the palace, some young figures with extraordinary auras were excitedly looking at the palace gate that was slowly opening. In front of them stood a young man and a woman in luxurious clothes. The man was handsome and tall. His body emitted an astonishing Reiki energy fluctuation. Apparently, he was a powerful pattern artist. The corners of his mouth curled up, showing the arrogance and confidence of a monstrous genius. The woman had long hair draped over her shoulders, and her facial features were top-notch. The same arrogance appeared on her face. The two of them had a cold energy fluctuation, which made the others feel uncomfortable in this extremely cold place, but the two of them didn't have any obstacles. Congratulations, young master and miss, for successfully opening the Ice Emperor's vestige. A young man behind them flattered. The man who was addressed as young master smiled indifferently, and the arrogance in his eyes became even stronger. Before the Holy War started, this young master has been preparing for many years. We must get the inheritance of the Ice Emperor's vestige. The noble woman next to him also raised her eyebrows, smiling. Second brother, how do you know the specific location of the Ice Emperor's palace? The man glanced at her, his eyes filled with affection. You don't know, do you? Actually, the first city master of our Wind Frost City was the most trusted subordinate of the Ice Emperor. He had followed the Ice Emperor for many years. Ah? The first city lord is someone close to the Ice Empress? The woman was very surprised, and her eyes flashed with light. That's right. This is our clan's secret. It's said that an extremely large-scale sacred war erupted in the Chaos Devil world 10,000 years ago, and numerous great figures of the human race participated in that battle of gods and devils. At the mention of that battle, everyone's expressions changed. Although it had been 10,000 years, there were very few records in the ancient books. However, everyone in the world knew that back then, the entire Midland was nearly destroyed by that great war. Ice Empress also participated in that battle? The woman asked. That's right. The man gave a definite answer and continued. In the Battle of Chaotic Devil Territory, many big clans were involved. Many sects and forces were destroyed. At that time, some peerless experts of the human clan had fallen. Eventually, although the Ice Emperor survived, many of his friends and relatives were killed on the battlefield. The Ice Emperor was grief-stricken, and he was hurt badly. Eventually, he left the Ice Emperor city and returned to his birthplace. Birthplace? The woman was bewildered for a while before continuing. The North River Ice Territory? Yeah, the North River Ice Territory is the birthplace of the Ice Emperor. After thousands of years, the North River Ice Territory had a great change. The Ice Emperor and the entire North River family had disappeared in the history. I heard that the enemies of the Ice Emperor had come to take revenge? Ha ha! The man beamed a faint smile. Revenge? I think they just want the inheritance treasure of the Ice Emperor. If the Ice Emperor hadn't been hurt badly, not to mention his enemies, how many people in this world would have dared to provoke him? After the great change of the North River, the 10,000 years of wind and snow had buried the glory of the imperial palace. Until then, the Ice Emperor had disappeared from this world forever. Some said that he was killed by the alliance of his enemies. Some said that his cultivation base was damaged badly, and he had to wander in every corner of this world. Some said that after experiencing the ups and downs, the Ice Emperor had seen through the grudges and grudges of the world, hiding in a paradise that no one knew about. Although none of the rumors could be confirmed, after thousands of years, the Ice Emperor had disappeared in the long river of history. Moreover, the North River family had disappeared. Everyone slowly accepted that the Ice Emperor had returned to his homeland. There were only a few records about the Ice Emperor in the ancient books. Created by cold, shaped by wind and snow, stubborn by ice, the great emperor whose name was like the arrival of wind and snow, and who was invaded by cold waves, only left behind a legend in the end. However, even though the Ice Empress had disappeared, the search for the inheritance and treasures she had left behind had never stopped. Looking at the palace gate that was already 2/3 open, the man's face was filled with anticipation and excitement. The world thinks that the imperial palace in the North River territory has the treasure of the Ice Emperor, but no one knows that the true inheritance of the Emperor is actually here. After listening to the man's explanation, the woman's eyes also glowed with excitement. Then, she suddenly asked in confusion, "Is the Ice Emperor a rune master?" According to the clan records left behind by the first city lord, although the Ice Emperor had some attainments in runes, he was not proficient in them, the man answered. "If that's the case, second brother, why are you still going through so much trouble?" The woman was even more confused. She was especially clear that the man was a third-rank saint-rank runemaster. However, the Ice Emperor was not a runemaster, so the inheritance he left behind would naturally not be too compatible with him. Seeing the woman's confusion, the man smiled gently with pity. The reason why I'm doing this is mainly for you, for me?" The woman opened her eyes wide and looked at the man. "Yes, your ice soul sacred body bloodline boundary has yet to reach the level of a supreme sacred body, and your cultivation has been stuck at the first rank of the Saint King realm. But any of the inheritance power of the Ice Emperor can definitely be compatible with your bloodline power, and you will definitely be able to evolve your bloodline boundary to the supreme sacred body. If you are lucky, it is not impossible to surpass the supreme sacred body." Hearing the man's words, the woman was immediately moved. She quickly grabbed the man's arm and said happily, "I knew that second brother treats me the best. Unlike big brother, who always has a stiff face." Hearing the two words, big brother, a hint of undetectable coldness flashed across the man's eyes. Then, he smiled and said, "Big brother is the next city lord's successor. His style of doing things is much better than ours." It's not like that. I feel that second brother is the best candidate for the next city lord." "Don't talk nonsense. Big brother is the one chosen by heaven, and all the elders in the clan are on his side, so what?" The woman retorted with dissatisfaction, then said to the man in an extremely serious tone, "Second brother, after I obtain the Ice Emperor's inheritance, I will definitely do my best to help you ascend to the position of city lord. At that time, with our abilities, we will not be afraid of big brother at all." Seeing the other party's serious expression, the man shook his head. He gently pushed the woman away and smiled helplessly. "Really, what nonsense are you saying now?" After saying that, the man turned around. At the same time, a hint of a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and a hint of coldness surged in his eyes. The woman did not notice the man's strangeness. Then she said, "Second brother, didn't you come here for nothing this time? The Holy War recruitment opportunity is rare, yet you wasted so much time on me." "Ha!" The man turned around and smiled. "Previously, I also thought that I came here for nothing, but the heavens helped me. On the way, someone sent me a big gift." "Big gift?" The woman was bewildered for a while, then her eyes brightened. "You mean the Ice God Stone?" "Smart." The man's eyes were also filled with spirit. "I've searched for so long in the North River ice field, but I couldn't find the Ice God Stone. I didn't expect to find it so easily after searching for it for so long. But what does the ice god stone have to do with you coming here? Because I'm about to get the complete ice god stone. The man's face was filled with excitement. It had to be said that he knew much more about the Ice Empress than ordinary people. In fact, the Ice Emperor had divided the ice god stone into two parts. One part was brought to the North River ice field, and the other part was left here, using the power of the ice god stone to maintain the Ice Emperor city for 10,000 years. The woman felt even more incredulous. She scanned the luxurious jade-like buildings around, which looked like a painting in the sky. It could be said to be a work of nature. No wonder why each brick and tile here is preserved so well. It's because of the power of the ice god stone, yeah. The man nodded affirmatively. Although the ice god stone doesn't have a precise ranking on the divine weapon list, its power is endless. It can freeze 1,000 miles in just a blink of an eye. It's definitely one of the top 10 divine weapons. If I use it in the talisman technique, it will be a terrifying weapon. The man's voice was low, his eyes sharp, as if his ambition had just awakened. It's the will of God. Even God is helping you, second brother, the woman said happily. The man retracted his sharp aura and continued, apart from that, I'm here to look for something. But even the first city lord wasn't sure if that thing is here, so the chances of finding it will be very low. What is it? The woman asked curiously. Monster. The man answered. Monster. That's right. The man squinted, his hands clenched into fists, replying meaningfully, a monster that swallows Reiki energy to survive. Swoosh. At this moment, the door of the palace was completely opened. A dense fog gushed out, making it impossible to see what was going on inside. The dazzling light from the ruins flickered, and the piercingly cold cyclone that covered the sky gradually calmed down. Everyone's eyes were burning with passion. The young man and woman looked at each other, feeling excited. The palace is open, the woman said. Let's go in. The man couldn't wait any longer. However, just as he finished speaking, the man's eyes suddenly darkened, and he turned around to look at the sky behind him. His voice was cold, and his tone was cold. Who are you? Swoosh, the cyclone, which had yet to completely calm down, once again became rapid. Everyone was startled and looked up, only to see 3 figures with cold auras standing on top of a city tower that was more than 10 meters tall. Beside the 3 of them, there was a majestic figure of a beast. The leader looked up coldly, looking down at the people in front of him. There seemed to be a flash of purple in his deep eyes. Chapter 1362. The person who will take your life, Hua! A rapid and piercingly cold cyclone swept out, and the cold voice did not have the slightest trace of emotion. On the city platform, Chu Hen's gaze was as deep as the water of a deep well, as he looked down at the young man and woman in front of the palace. Everyone's faces darkened. One of them shouted, "How dare you? Do you know who you're talking to?" Chu Hen directly ignored the other party's reprimand. His calm and unwavering eyes still coldly stared at the young man. "Humph, so it's you guys." At the same time, the young woman coldly snorted, and looked at Yi Yao and Long Xuanxuang beside Chu Hen with disdain. "I let you live that day, but I didn't expect that you would dare to come knocking on my door." The young man beside her also recognized Long Xuanxuang and Yi Yao. Honestly speaking, he was extremely surprised that the 2 girls were able to find their way here. "Return the ice god stone, and we'll leave immediately," Long Xuanxuang immediately said. She did not want Chu Hen to fight with these people. She did not want Chu Hen to suffer any harm because of her. Long Xuanxuang directly requested for the ice god stone. As for the matter of her being injured, she would not dwell on it. Heh! The man raised his eyebrows, and a teasing smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Only returning the ice god stone? Just now, this person seemed to have said that he wanted to take my life. There was no nervousness in his frivolous words, only disdain. Long Xuanxuang frowned slightly. She glanced at Chu Hen and said again, "We only want the ice god stone." Ha 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 ha, words that have been spoken are like water that has been poured out. How can I change my words at the last moment? Since you're all here, why don't you stay a little longer? I really hope that you can stay. I was a little too heavy-handed last time, and I express my deep apologies. The young man looked at Long Xuanxuang's beautiful face in a frivolous manner as he spoke in a playful tone. As soon as he finished speaking, before Long Xuanxuang could say anything else, a clear chill surged over like an undercurrent in the deep sea. I want the ice divine stone. I'll also take your dog life. Buzz! A domineering and powerful aura immediately overflowed. Chu Hen's aura became colder and colder. Long Xuanxuang and Yi Yao were both shocked and anxious. This was not what they wanted to see. Chu Hen's words infuriated the group of people in front of him. Humph, how arrogant! I want to see what kind of ability you have to shout here. The young woman's face was as cold as frost. She shouted coldly, "Chop off this arrogant thing's hands and feet." Yes! Everyone responded in unison. Following that, a few figures with explosive aura rose into the air. One by one, they burst out with shocking speed and attacks and pounced towards Chu Hen and the other two. You don't know your place. Go to hell. Facing the powerful and ferocious crowd, Chu Hen did not even have the intention of moving his feet. When the crowd rushed in front of him, Chu Hen's eyelids lifted and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. He raised one hand and clenched his fist in the air. Along with an extremely cold and powerful sword momentum, a black sword shadow instantly swept out from the center of his palm. In an instant, the black sword shadow exploded like a dazzling light and immediately turned into dozens of sharp sword rays. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The dozens of sword rays were like flickering lights and passing shadows, intersecting with each other as they attacked the crowd. The speed was as fast as an Aurora flying shuttle. The crowd only heard the sound of the air being cut apart. Before they could react, streams of sword rays cut through their bodies one after another. Hiss, hiss, hiss. A series of sounds of flesh being cut apart were accompanied by panicked screams. The aggressive crowd's spirit was greatly reduced. Blood splattered, and the black sword cut through the air. All the people were cut to the ground. The tens of sword images that flew through the air quickly gathered together, transforming into a black runic divine sword that emitted a desolate aura and returned to Chu Hen's palm. Chu Hen held the long sword diagonally, and his extraordinary aura suppressed the crowd. Seeing that the crowd could not even get close to Chu Hen and could not get up, the young man's face quietly showed a trace of vigilance. He actually could not see through Chu Hen's real cultivation. I am the young master of Wind Frost City, Situ Xiao. Who are you? Wind Frost City. Yi Yao and Long Xuanxuang were a little confused. Although they were quite unfamiliar with the name Wind Frost City, they could conclude from the arrogant tone of the other party that Wind Frost City must be a powerful force. Compared to the Lingyun sect, it would only be stronger, not weaker. However, Chu Hen's expression still did not change much. He raised his hand and pointed his sword at the other party. Sorry, I'm not interested in the background of a dead person. Domineering. Resolute. Situ Xiao laughed instead of getting angry. Ha 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 ha, you really think too highly of yourself. Today, all of you shall stay here. As soon as he finished speaking, a dazzling golden light shone from between Situ Xiao's brows. In an instant, a mighty Reiki energy burst out like a torrent. The anger of a third stage Saint Inscription Master is not something that a nobody like you can bear. An extremely powerful aura swept out. Situ Xiao raised both of his hands, and the Reiki energy that lingered around him immediately transformed into a series of dazzling mysterious runes. The runes were combined in an instant. Suddenly, a strong wind blew in the sky. Situ Xiao stretched out one of his palms toward the position where Chu Hen and the others were and lifted his 5 fingers. Ice roar! As soon as he finished speaking, the The city platform where Chu Hen and the others were at was immediately shrouded in a piercingly cold ice whirlpool. The terrifying ice whirlpool was like a tornado formed by a row of sharp arrows, and the sharp ice blades were like knives that rapidly converged and shrunk toward the center. The huge city platform broke rapidly, and countless narrow and long cracks extended up and down. The expressions of Yi Yao and Long Xuanxuang changed slightly. Just as the two ladies were about to take action, Chu Hen had already raised his sword. He raised his sword, and the sword light that burst out of the formless Tharch blade was like a bunch of heavenly blades. The dazzling light was like a hurricane that split the sky, and countless ice blades were shattered. Chu Hen's figure moved, and he swept toward Sidu Shao with an endless sword momentum. Humph! A hint of disdain flashed in Sidu Zhao's eyes. Stupid! Then, he clasped his 10 fingers together, and a shocking spatial rhythm stacked up. Hum! A vigorous Reiki energy trembled, and a golden light screen suddenly appeared in front of Chu Hen. Bang! Chu Hen's sword hit the light screen, causing a violent tremor. Layers of light spread out, and a circle of longitudinal light rippled in the void. Chapter 1363. Buzz. Tens of thousands of talisman lights intertwined with each other, and countless dragon-like light patterns intertwined with each other, radiating endless bright holy light. Before Chu Hen could split open the giant light curtain in front of him, a talisman array that exuded an extremely dangerous aura suddenly appeared below him. "Big brother Chu Hen, be careful," Yi Yao hurriedly called out. "Humph!" Sidu Shao sneered contemptuously. "It's too late." Buzz. As soon as his voice fell, the range of the talisman array was instantly covered by a cold wind, accompanied by an extremely cold whirlpool of frost. Suddenly, incomparably sharp icicles appeared in the air. Each icicle was dozens of meters long, nearly 100 meters long. For example, sharp icicles that came down diagonally, one after another, like giant thorns of thorns, attacked towards Chu Hen. The corner of Chu Hen's eyes slightly narrowed, and like a ghost, he continuously changed his position. Bang! Bang! Extremely lethal icicle spikes continued to rush down, piercing through the ground and piercing deep into the ground. In the blink of an eye, Chu Hen felt as if he was in a forest of icicles that was filled with cold air. The giant icicles that were scattered all over the place were like large messy wooden stakes. It was spectacular and majestic. On the other side, Yi Yao and Long Xuanxuang were about to step forward to help, but the mysterious talisman array once again set off an even more astonishing murderous aura. They saw Sidu Zhao's hands continuously changing various seals. The gorgeous talismans that lingered around his body were like stars surrounding the bright moon, emitting especially violent energy fluctuations. "Ice Defense Beasts Array," Sidu Shao shouted in a deep voice. Whoosh! Monstrous airwaves stacked up, and the biting cold current was like an icy blue light beam that went straight to the sky. In the blink of an eye, Chu Hen, who was in the middle of it, was instantly hit by a great cold. Together with the formless emperor blade in his hand, a thick layer of ice quickly covered his whole body. The pillar of light was like a powerful barrier formed from 10,000 years of frost. Before Yi Yao and Long Xuanxuang could get close, an icy vortex whizzed out, directly blocking the two of them. Bang, bang, bang! At the same time, the large and majestic ice pillars cracked in unison. Along with the shattered ice crystal fragments, a ferocious and terrifying ice monster rushed out from each ice pillar. The ice beast's claws were like blades, and its fangs were like swords. They looked like ferocious wolves and tigers with spikes on their backs. Woo! Along with a deep roar, each of the ice beast's eyes emitted a blue radiance. Then, their 4 claws stepped on the ice flames and transformed into beams of icy blue light as they dashed towards Chu Hen. The sharp blue light was like a flowing arrow that tore through the sky. In an instant, Chu Hen felt like he was in the middle of thousands of sharp blades. The ice whirlpool roared like a hurricane. Reckless thing! Standing on the other side, the young miss of Wind Frost City, Situya, sneered disdainfully. From her point of view, when Chu Hen and his group found this place, he would already be a dead man. The power of a third step Saint Inscription Master wasn't something that anyone could withstand. Turn into pieces. The corner of Situ Zhao's mouth curled up into a sinister smile. The runes that flickered around his body glowed with a strong rhythm. Within the runes, all the ice beasts that were pouncing towards Chu Hen released an abnormal aura, bursting out with unstoppable killing intent. The dazzling icy blue aurora was like a blended starlight. Long Xuanxuang and Yi Yao's faces turned pale. At this moment, boom! An earth-shattering sound exploded in the void, accompanied by a vast black wave that spread out in the sky above the Ice Emperor Palace. All the ferocious ice beasts that were pouncing towards Chu Hen were like fragile bubbles, bursting into thousands of powder one after another. Buzz! An incomparably overbearing aura filled the sky and the earth. In the midst of the frenzied whirlwind storm, a godlike black shadow stood in the sky, its whole body surging with a blazing aura. What? Situ Xiao frowned, his face revealing a shocked expression. Following that, an even more surging Reiki energy swept out. But at the same time, there was another explosion, and the monstrous purple demonic flame swept out in all directions with the power to burn the sky. In the next moment, a pair of purple shadow wings suddenly rushed out of the mighty demonic flame storm. What? The purple shadow wings were overflowing with colorful lights, gorgeous and dazzling. The mysterious patterns swaying on the wings had an indescribable demonic and ghostly aura. A wisp of sharp vibrating sound filled the air, and a might that caused one's heart to palpitate suffused out. Suddenly, the shadow wings that were rapidly chopping down turned into dozens of identical purple shadow wings. In the process of high-speed movement, dozens of shadow blades quickly arranged themselves into a giant triangular shadow blade. An earth-shattering cyclone came crashing down. Following that, countless deep and dense cracks appeared on the ground. Bang! A crisp sound rang out. The punishment blade was like a heavenly ray that tore through the sky, instantly piercing through the ice-blue talisman, a ray light pillar barrier, and the golden light screen in front of Situ Xiao. The purple shadow blade's attack did not decrease, and it destroyed everything in its path. Feeling the incomparably sharp and terrifying sharpness, Situ Zhao's face darkened. He released all the Reiki energy and immediately turned it into a luxurious talisman array. Immediately after, he stretched out both of his palms, and countless talisman arrays intertwined to form a colorful big net. Boom! In the next second, the extremely destructive triangular shadow wings slashed down like a giant blade, firmly striking the big talisman array net. As soon as the two collided, sparks flew in all directions, and the ground cracked open. The violent shock wave was like an instantaneous explosion, and the ground cracked open layer by layer. Large and small crushed stones and ice shards were like a swarm of millions of locusts, wantonly splattering everywhere. The veins on Situ Zhao's arms bulged, but his body did not move even half a step. His face was filled with a sinister sneer. "Your strength is not bad, but it's a pity that it's not enough." Before he could finish speaking, a sharp and rapid sound of thunder and lightning suddenly struck between the heavens and the earth. Crack! It was as if he had teleported and moved like a ghost. A figure emitting a sharp murderous aura instantly arrived in front of Situ Xiao. The figure's toes touched the ground and the figure rushed forward. Situ Zhao's rapidly contracted pupils reflected the increasingly clear, handsome, and indifferent face. Chu Hen held the formless emperor blade's hilt in a reverse grip, and the other hand pressed on the end of the hilt. He pointed the blade at his opponent and directly launched a frontal attack. Chi. The formless emperor blade, which was already surging with a dense black light, was quickly covered with gorgeous purple electric arcs. The restless electric arcs were like the dragon's thorny vines that wrapped around the blade. Chi! The sharp sound caused everyone's eardrums to tremble. The formless emperor blade seemed to have pierced through a thin piece of paper, and it slashed through the big talisman array net. Then, the attack did not decrease in the slightest as it attacked Situ Xiao, who was behind him. Panic quietly covered his entire face. Situ Xiao's expression changed dramatically. Stop! Before he could finish the word hand, the blade of the sword, which was swimming with purple light, directly pierced into his opponent's chest. Chapter 1364. I meant what I said. I'll take your life. His emotionless voice was terrifyingly calm. Swoosh! The exceptionally ear-piercing sound of a sharp weapon cutting through the air caused everyone's eardrums to contract. The formless emperor blade, which was flickering with purple lightning, pierced into Situ Zhao's chest in a head-on manner. In an instant, the faces of Situ Ye, Long Xuan Yi Yao, and the others changed drastically. Under everyone's unprepared gazes, a beam of lightning instantly leaped out from Situ Zhao's back. The cold and sharp formless emperor blade directly pierced through his chest. Swoosh! The sky and earth spun, and the wind and clouds surged. Situ Zhao's pupils shrank to the size of a needle-tip. His eyes, which were about to burst open, were filled with intense shock and disbelief. The change happened so fast that it was completely unexpected. Ah! A deep roar came from his throat. Situ Xiao clenched his teeth and firmly grasped the sword with one hand, trying to break free. However, Chu Hen did not give him any chance to struggle. The moment the formless emperor blade pierced through his body, an irresistible and powerful impact followed. Situ Zhao's feet immediately left the ground, and his entire body was pushed backward. Chu Hen's hand firmly grasped the hilt of the sword, and with the momentum of the sword, he pushed Situ Xiao into the abyss. Bang! Following that, Situ Xiao heavily hit the huge pillar of the ice palace that had just opened. The formless emperor blade's blade was also deeply nailed into the pillar. Bright red blood immediately burst out from Situ Zhao's body. Chu Hen slightly leaned his body, still holding the hilt of the sword. The distance between their eyes was no more than 30 centimeters. One was angry and flustered. The other was indifferent and calm. In the blink of an eye, the outcome of the battle had already been decided. No one would have thought that in just a few seconds, the sharp sword in Chu Hen's hand had already pierced through the body of Situ Xiao, a third-stage Saint Inscription Master. "You're too slow," Chu Hen said coldly. Situ Zhao's face suddenly turned pale, and his whole body trembled. Inscriptionists were different from Wu Xiu. The former controlled the power of spirit and used runes to control the situation. It would not be an exaggeration to say that given enough time, a pattern caster could kill several Wu Xiu of the same level with the power of a glyph array. Similarly, compared to Wu Xiu, the lack of time was also the greatest weakness of a tattoo artist. Precision. Straightforward. Clean. Chu Hen used the most direct and ruthless method to target Situ Zhao's weakness. He did not give his opponent any time to react. He immediately took out the power of his 6-star demon eyes and grabbed his opponent's life with a thunderous aura. Staring at Chu Hen's demonic eyes, Situ Xiao felt a chill that he had never felt before. The formless emperor blade firmly nailed him to the palace pillar, completely unable to move. Immediately after, without waiting for Situ Xiao to react, Chu Hen raised his left arm slightly. Crack! A violent and sharp sound was heard, and a beautiful purple lightning immediately covered Chu Hen's palm. You! Situ Xiao turned pale with fright. The corners of Chu Hen's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a disdainful smile. You can return the divine ice stone now. What? Situ Zhao's entire face was instantly filled with fear. How dare you? On the other side, Situ Ye was also furious. She shouted at Chu Hen coldly. At the same time, she released a strong force of true yuan and rushed towards Chu Hen. Hold on, hiss. Before Situ Ye could finish her sentence, an arm that was flickering with purple lightning pierced into Situ Zhao's dantian. A series of strong electric currents were like blooming electric vines, instantly tearing all the meridians in Situ Zhao's body. Fresh blood splattered on Chu Hen's face. His originally cold face became even more demonic at this moment. Ah! A miserable howl that sounded like a pig being slaughtered resounded through half of the Ice Emperor Palace. Situ Zhao's facial features were distorted, and he looked extremely hideous. The intense pain was accompanied by the rapid loss of his vitality. The appearance of this scene caused everyone present to be so shocked that their faces turned ashen. Even Yi Yao and Long Xuanxuang were dumbfounded. At this moment, Chu Hen was like a cold-blooded demon. Half of his arm was embedded in Situ Zhao's abdomen. Shortly after, Chu Hen retracted his hand. His arm, which was surrounded by purple lightning, was not stained with even a little bit of blood. In his palm, astonishingly, there was an additional ice-blue crystal that was emitting an endless cold cyclone. The disciples of Wind Frost City all gasped in fear. Chu Hen had forcefully dug the divine ice stone out of Situ Zhao's body. How terrifying was this person! How ruthless was this method! However, in Chu Hen's view, the moment Situ Zhao injured Long Xuanxuang and took the divine ice stone, he was already dead. Let him go, I'm going to kill you! Tuya was extremely angry. At this moment, she rushed behind Chu Hen like a madwoman. However, the moment she stretched out her palm to attack Chu Hen's eyes suddenly opened, and a cold light shot out. In an instant, a circle of violent chaotic air surged out. The ground rapidly ruptured and shattered, and a sudden gust of wind swept out. Layers upon layers of cold wind mixed with crushed stones and ice shards exploded all over the place. In the next instant, Tuya's aura was immediately crushed to the extreme. Her feet left the ground, and her whole body floated in the air. A black shadow that looked like a demon directly grabbed her throat. Buzz, an unshakable and domineering divine aura suppressed the whole area. The black shadow's body was burning with illusory and ethereal flames, giving people the feeling that it was Chu Hen's clone in the dark. This level can also be called the Saint King realm? A cold and mocking voice came out of Chu Hen's mouth. He slightly turned to look at Tuya's pale face. 2 pieces of trash. Trash. It was like a loud slap on her face. Tuya felt as if she had fallen into an abyss of despair. Especially when she saw Situ Zhao hanging on the palace pillar, covered in blood. Her whole body was spinning and she was terrified. The whole thing happened in just a few blinks of an eye. The situation was completely out of their imagination. At this moment, she realized that the man in front of her was someone she couldn't afford to offend. Without looking at Situ Zhao, Chu Hen slowly turned around and looked at Tuya. The dangerous aura of death was surging. The other people of Wind Frost City were trembling, but no one dared to step forward to stop him. Feeling the cold murderous intent from Chu Hen, Tuya was completely dominated by fear. Her whole body was trembling, and she no longer had the arrogance and spirit she had before. In her eyes, Chu Hen was no different from a demon. Brother Chu Hen! At this time, Yi Yao shouted. Long Xuanxuang also stepped forward and said softly. Don't. It was like a stone was thrown into the calm water, and circles of ripples appeared. Chu Hen's body seemed to stop for a moment, and then the cold murderous intent in his eyes faded. Buzz! Immediately, the black shadow emitted a slight rhythm of power, and then like a collapsing flame, it disappeared. Tuya, who had lost her support, directly fell to the ground. Get lost! Chu Hen said coldly. Tuya was lying on the ground like a pile of mud. Her eyes were filled with hatred and resentment, but more than that, there was helplessness and fear. The other disciples of Wind Frost City hurried to help Tuya up. Big Miss, are you okay? Let's go. He didn't even dare to look at Situ Zhao, who was hanging on the pillar in the palace. Panicking, he hurriedly escaped from this place. Looking at the few people fleeing in panic, Yi Yao and Long Xuanxuang were silent. At this moment they felt extremely uneasy. If it was under normal circumstances, They would not interfere with any of Chu Hen's actions, even if he had to kill everyone here. However, the cold aura that emanated from Chu Hen made them feel more and more afraid. He was like a ruthless, cold-blooded hunter. His cold aura was frightening. Although letting them go might cause trouble later, the two girls could not help but stop Chu Hen. "Brother Chu Hen, what's wrong?" Yi Yao stepped forward and grabbed his arm. Her eyes were filled with worry. Chu Hen shook his head, and the look in his eyes softened. "I'm fine." Then, he turned to look at Long Xuanxuang and handed the divine ice stone in his hand to her. Looking at the cold divine ice stone, Long Xuanxuang could not help but feel a little complicated. Just now, Chu Hen's aura was even colder than the divine ice stone. "What's wrong?" Chu Hen raised his eyebrows and asked. Long Xuanxuang smiled and shook her head. "Nothing." Then, she kept the divine ice stone in her palm, and the stone turned into an ice whirlpool and merged into her palm. With the escape of Si Tu and the rest, and the return of the divine ice stone, the atmosphere was somewhat relaxed. "Seems like there's an unexpected gain." Chu Hen turned back to look at the ancient palace with its open door and dense fog surging inside. "The aura of the ice monarch is even stronger," Long Xuanxuang said. "Seems like this place must be related to the ice monarch." "Sister Xuanxuang." Yi Yao looked at her with deep meaning. Long Xuanxuang pursed her red lips and looked at Chu Hen. The latter nodded. Chapter 1365. The palace was made of ice, a work of art. Every inch of it was luxurious and bright, like a rare piece of jade in the world. A steady stream of mist gushed out from the inside of the palace. It showed a gorgeous and mysterious sense of beauty. Chu Hen, Long Xuanxuang, and Yi Yao nodded knowingly. Then, they stepped up the stairs and walked towards the palace. It had to be said that this was an unexpected gain that they were looking forward to. What was more exciting was whether the familiar aura really came from the Ice Empress. Buzz, suddenly, just as the three of them were about to step into the palace, a particularly strong wave of energy immediately spread out from the inside of the palace. Shockingly, numerous strange talisman markings and secret talismans appeared all over the enormous palace. The runes on the pillars and walls of the palace were all swaying. The interior of the palace then projected a dazzling brilliance like the sun. Then, Chu Hen suddenly felt his feet sink, as if he was blocked by an invisible chain. At the same time, Yi Yao's brows were slightly furrowed as confusion appeared in her eyes. "I can't walk anymore, huh?" On the contrary, Long Xuanxuang didn't have any strange reaction. She turned to look at the two of them, puzzled. "What's wrong? Is Sister Xuanxuang not affected?" Yi Yao asked. "What affected?" Yi Yao and Chu Hen looked at each other, shook their heads and continued, "I can't walk anymore. It seems that something is blocking in front of me. Brother Chu Hen, is it the same?" Chu Hen nodded slightly, and then looked at the palace door in front of him. He closed his eyes gently, and the next moment, his eyelids suddenly opened, and a demonic purple light bloomed from his eyes. Hua, together with a sharp sound in the air, Chu Hen's vision showed a kind of dreamy layer. In an instant, the overall structure of the palace was roughly presented in Chu Hen's mind. Especially mysterious ancient runes covered the entire palace, inside and outside, and all kinds of strange runes were like a maze of heavenly secrets. Chu Hen found that there were many invisible optical fibers in front of him and Yi Yao. Tiny and dense optical fibers were placed in front of him like a fishing net. On the other hand, Long Xuanxuang did not have these strange optical fibers in front of her. "Is it because of the Ice God Stone?" Chu Hen muttered to himself. Under the detection of the power of the demon eye, Chu Hen vaguely sensed that Long Xuanxuang's body was covered with a thin layer of gauze. This layer of gauze exuded a faint chill, which originated from the aura of the Ice Divine Stone. After thinking for a short while, Chu Hen slowly raised his right hand and touched the light. At the same time, a stream of primary inner force gradually surged from his palm. As soon as the two intersected and the optical fiber was cut off, The other ancient runes and secret scrolls scattered all over the palace also became restless. Chu Hen could only feel an extremely astonishing counterforce gradually surging towards him. It was like an undercurrent gathering in the deep sea, making it hard to resist. Qua. Immediately, Chu Hen withdrew his palm, and at the same time, the purple light in his eyes faded. Looking back at the two women, he said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid that only those who have the Ice God Stone or those with Ice Attribute bloodline can enter this place." Ice God Stone? Ice Attribute bloodline? The two women looked at each other in surprise. "Can't we break the barrier by force?" Yi Yao asked. Chu Hen shook his head. Obviously he didn't want to do so. First of all, this place was likely the place where the Ice Emperor had stayed, and there were probably not many people in this world who would dare to break the barrier set up by the Ice Emperor. "I can give the Ice God Stone to one of you," Long Xuanxuang said. "Give it to Big Brother Chu Hen." Yi Yao immediately responded, "Ice attribute power belongs to the extreme cold, and my Tai Chi holy body needs to cultivate both yin and yang. If it is too strong, it will destroy the balance of my attributes." Yi Yao, who had already stepped into the Saint King realm, understood her own situation best. She also knew very well what she needed. Immediately, Long Xuanxuang looked at Chu Hen. However, Chu Hen also shook his head and refused. "No need, you go in alone." "Why?" The two women looked at each other in confusion. Chu Hen had mastered a lot of attribute. In addition to his own two bloodline boundaries, he also had the power of the 7 stars, the power of the profound killer divine thunder, and even the power of limitless contained 4 attributes. Most importantly, Chu Hen had also cultivated the primordial chaos secret art given to him by martial sect master Dongfang Hengji, which allowed him to integrate many types of power into the sea and return them to their origin. Therefore, there was no such thing as Yi Yao's situation. "If the Ice God Stone is with you, I will feel more at ease," Chu Hen said softly and solemnly. Regardless of whether the ancient inheritance left behind by the Ice Empress was still present in the palace, opportunities were always accompanied by risks at any time. Long Xuanxuang's cultivation had not yet reached the Saint King realm. The Ice God's Stone could be a safeguard for her. Without waiting for Long Xuanxuang to say anything, Chu Hen nodded straightforwardly. "Go. There are some things that don't need to be courteous." Long Xuanxuang pursed her red lips lightly and said nothing more. Then she took a deep breath and turned to look at the mysterious door in front of her, a hint of determination flashing in her eyes. Buzz, the moment she stepped through the threshold, a strong dazzling light burst out of the palace. Long Xuanxuang seemed to be bathed in a divine glow, and her picturesque back was extremely beautiful. A circle of ripples appeared in the air, and under the gaze of Chu Hen and Yi Yao, Long Xuanxuang's beautiful figure blended into the soft light. Whoosh! Just as Long Xuanxuang stepped into the palace, the sound of heavy objects rubbing against each other could be heard, and the 2 jade-like doors slowly closed. "Big Brother Chu Hen?" Yi Yao looked nervous. The corner of Chu Hen's eyes narrowed, and then he shook his head, indicating that there was no need to worry. Although he did not know what was inside, now that things had reached this point, it was Long Xuanxuang's good fortune. About 10 seconds later, the door of the palace was sealed again. Long Xuanxuang's aura also seemed to escape into the endless void. Looking at this impregnable ice palace, Chu Hen's eyes showed a hint of expectation. After standing in place for a while, the two turned and walked down the stairs. Then, Chu Hen's gaze shifted to the side, sweeping towards a tall and imposing palace pillar. On the palace pillar, Situ Shao was nailed to the stone wall by the formless emperor blade like a salted fish, and at this moment, he was no longer breathing. Blood dyed most of his body red, and his head was crooked, his eyes wide open. His death could be described as extremely miserable. Chu Hen walked toward the other party, and at the same time, a layer of black flame overflowed from his body. Buzz, then, the black flame emitted a strange optical fiber. Chu Hen raised one of his hands, and the black optical fiber that was released from his palm directly attacked the center of Sidu Zhao's head. Like a fine line that rushed out, it directly drilled into the center of Sidu Zhao's eyebrows. Yi Yao, who was standing at the back, was a little surprised to see this scene. However, she knew very well what Chu Hen was doing. So, this is how Big Brother Chu Hen snatched other people's street tree spirit and martial arts dual cultivation was no longer a secret. However, what was puzzling was that Chu Hen's attainments in the rune technique had also reached an amazing level. Those who were familiar with Chu Hen knew that he did not usually spend too much time on the rune technique. Moreover, the street tree that he encountered before had been destroyed and forcefully snatched by the enemy rune technique. Therefore, it was not difficult to guess that it was Chu Hen's intention. At this moment, Chu Hen suddenly stopped. At the same time, many doubts appeared on his face. "What's wrong, Big Brother Chu Hen?" Yi Yao walked up and asked. Chu Hen frowned slightly as he stared at Sidu Zhao's body in confusion. "It's gone, gone?" Yi Yao was even more confused. "What's gone?" "Dao. Tree." Chu Hen said these two words in a deep voice. He then looked into Yi Yao's eyes and said, "There's nothing in his Naiwan palace. The street tree has disappeared." "What?" Yi Yao was in disbelief. However, Chu Hen did not look like he was joking at all. She asked tentatively, "Could it be that your strength was too strong just now and shattered his Dao tree?" After saying that, Yi Yao realized she was wrong. The street tree of a third-stage Saint Inscription Master was extremely powerful. Even if Sidu Zhao's body was completely destroyed, his street tree would not disappear in a short period of time. Or was Sidu Zhao not dead? Was this his cloning secret technique? Yi Yao still secretly denied it. If Sidu Zhao was really so powerful, he would not have been killed by Chu Hen in just a few moves. Yi Yao made wild guesses and had no clue at all. At the same time, Chu Hen held onto the hilt of the non-phase Emperor blade with a single hand. Slightly exerting force with his arm, a hiss sound rang out as the sharp blade was immediately pulled out. Sidu Zhao, who had lost his support, powerlessly fell onto the ground like a pile of mud, without the slightest bit of vitality. Dead. Without a doubt. But where did his street tree go? In such a short period of time, it was impossible for someone to quietly take away his street tree without alerting Chu Hen and the other two. In that case, the secret must be hidden in this ice palace. With some doubts, Chu Hen looked at the palace pillar behind Sidu Zhao. The crystal-clear palace pillar was like jade, with a majestic aura. The pillar was more than 5 meters wide and nearly 100 meters long. The blood that splashed on it had already condensed into a thin layer of red crystals. From the beginning to the end, Sidu Zhao was still hanging there. A cold light flashed in Chu Hen's eyes. When he looked at it, he saw that the pillar was actually outlined with intricate and complicated fine lines. This is? It was like a shooting star in the dark night. Chu Hen looked at it from a close distance and was surprised to find that the entire huge pillar was engraved with abnormally fine secret runes. The twisted fine lines were very strange, like all kinds of strange characters, long and narrow lines, and strange beast-like shapes that he had never seen before. After a short moment of hesitation, Chu Hen placed his left palm on the body of the pillar. Then, a bright beam of light shone from between his eyebrows. Immediately, endless Reiki energy gushed out like a flood that had opened the floodgate. Under Chu Hen's control, the vast Reiki energy quickly flowed into the palace pillar. The palace pillar did not show any signs of breaking after being hit by such a large amount of Reiki energy. What was even more surprising was that the secret runes that were all over the body of the pillar suddenly lit up, emitting a striking white light. That is? Yi Yao opened her eyes wide, feeling very surprised. Not far away, Noni, the beast of Yin Yang, also raised its head and looked at the scene in front of it with vigilance. As more and more Reiki energy was injected into the pillar, The secret runes on the body of the pillar were like swimming vines of light, continuously glowing. Buzz! When the last rune light lit up, a strange space fluctuation was released from the palace pillar. At the same time, the entire wall of the pillar showed a dreamy distortion. The space was shaking uneasily, and the dazzling white light was like a crack. Before Chu Hen could react, an extremely strong suction force suddenly burst out from the distorted palace pillar. The dazzling white light immediately enveloped Chu Hen. Brother Chu Hen, Yi Yao, who was standing behind, was shocked. What? In the next moment, Chu Hen's pupils contracted sharply, and the space where he was suddenly spinning. The dazzling light immediately pulled him into the interior of the palace pillar. Voila! It was like passing through a long and narrow tunnel of time and space. The dazzling white light was like a curtain that was pulled open, and Chu Hen's field of vision immediately widened. What came into view was a slightly dark world. There were mountains, rivers, forests, and peaks. The mountains and rivers were vast, and the rivers were like dragons. Behind the faint dark clouds, there seemed to be light sprinkling down. However, the mountains, the earth, the vegetation, and the forest seemed to be engraved with mysterious ancient runes. Woo! A sharp and loud unknown strange howl came from a vast canyon. Chu Hen's eyes slightly darkened, and he leaped up and dashed in the direction of the sound. His field of vision, from far to near, could only see that in the canyon that extended endlessly, there was a huge formation Dao tree. The street tree was almost 10,000 feet tall, and it was bright and dazzling. The leaves and branches swayed, making a pleasant sound like wind chimes. It was Situ Zhao's street tree. Chu Hen was slightly surprised. Then, Chu Hen looked up and saw that there was another thing under the street tree. It was a living thing. The monster was about 20 to 30 meters tall, and it had a strange appearance. It looked a bit like a tree-ant, with a lush head of branches and leaves. However, its limbs were as sharp as claws, and it looked very agile and fast. Woo! At this moment the monster opened its mouth. It had no teeth, but it was like an abyss. Circles of white light quickly enveloped the huge street tree. The body of the street tree quickly twisted, and it turned into a beam of light at a speed visible to the naked eye and entered the monster's mouth. Although the two objects were very different in size, in just 2 blinks of an eye, the third stage Divine Inscription Master's street tree was completely devoured by the monster. This is? Chu Hen's pupils trembled slightly, and he clenched his fists tightly. Chapter 1366. A monster that devoured the street tree? Looking at the scene in front of him, Chu Hen's pupils constricted slightly, and his face was filled with shock. The street tree of a third stage Divine Inscription Master was completely devoured in an instant. What exactly was that monster? Woo! After devouring Situ Zhao's street tree, the monster's body glowed with a brilliant white light, and an extremely powerful and majestic Reiki energy erupted. Its sharp claws prostrated on the ground, and its weird body seemed to be splitting apart, revealing strange runes and secret inscriptions. Suddenly, at this moment, the monster suddenly turned its head to Chu Hen. A pair of golden eyes emitted a piercingly cold light. The moment Chu Hen made eye contact with the monster, he felt an inexplicable throbbing in his heart. It was as if he had seen the greed similar to hunger in the monster's eyes. Buzz, buzz, at the same time, Chu Hen suddenly felt that the street tree in his Naiwan palace was extremely uneasy. The monster became even more agitated, like a hungry beast staring at its prey. Its 4 claws dug deep into the ground, and it slowly approached Chu Hen. Chu Hen frowned slightly, and a hint of alertness surged between his brows. Woo! The monster let out a low roar, and there seemed to be crystal-clear saliva flowing out of its mouth. It could be seen that compared to Situ Zhao's street tree, it found the Reiki energy in Chu Hen's Naiwan palace more delicious. Although Chu Hen had not reached the level of a Divine Inscription Master, his street tree had fused with a rare treasure like the Divine Talisman Spiritual Tree. Whether it was the foundation of the street tree or the quality of the Reiki energy, they were not comparable to an ordinary inscription master. Obviously, the unknown monster had already discovered the uniqueness of Chu Hen. At the same time, Chu Hen was also carefully observing the monster. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. Perhaps because there was no obvious fear on Chu Hen's face, and there was no sign of him retreating or escaping, the monster approached cautiously. The atmosphere quickly became tense. The airflow that pervaded the world also had a kind of restless rhythm. Suddenly, 2 rays of golden light shot out from the monster's eyes. Chu Hen's cold eyes narrowed. He gripped the formless emperor blade in his hand, and a layer of blazing black flames stacked on top of the blade. Woo! Accompanied by a hasty howl, the monster's hind claws forcefully stomped on the ground, and its strong and muscular body suddenly leaped up. A powerful burst of speed erupted, setting off a powerful momentum as it pounced towards Chu Hen. The newcomer's speed was extremely fast. His attacks were even more ferocious. The distance of several miles disappeared in the blink of an eye. So fast! Chu Hen's expression changed slightly, and his pupils shrank. At the same time, his opponent's sharp claws were like heavy hooks tearing through the wind. In a hurry, the formless emperor blade shone brightly. The monarch blade that was burning with surging flames instantly enlarged into a broadsword light blade that was several meters long and half a meter wide. Bang! A heavy loud sound accompanied by a dazzling rain of fire splashed out. The monster's sharp claws heavily collided with the formless emperor blade. Chu Hen suddenly felt his arm go numb, but he didn't dare to be too careless. He directly used the impact of the opponent's attack to counterattack. Roar! At the same time that Chu Hen retreated, the monster opened its mouth and roared. A powerful Reiki energy overflowed from its body, lingering in front of it, and turning into a series of dazzling and gorgeous runes. Hundreds and thousands of runes quickly took shape, like a mysterious constellation pattern in the vast universe. Chu Hen was shocked once again. The opponent could also control the rune technique? Clang! Before Chu Hen could recover from the shock, a luxurious lightning attribute rune array stretched across 100 feet. The runes crisscrossed and intertwined, bursting with the power of thunder. Chu Hen's expression changed, and he only felt a destructive aura rapidly shrouding him. A bright silver light pierced through the vast sky, setting off endless destructive divine might. Rumble! The incomparably overbearing power of thunder was like a terrifying thunder dragon swooping down to the earth. In an instant, the place where Chu Hen stood burst into countless violent electric pillars. The ground below him was fractured and rocks exploded. Chi-chi! Following that, a series of restless thunderbird cries came from the incomparably violent silver lightning. In the next moment, dense purple electric arcs swam out from within, and like sharp blades, the purple electric arcs tore the silver electric arcs into pieces. Surrounded by purple electric arcs, Chu Hen's imposing manner was awe-inspiring. Holding the formless emperor blade, he coldly stared at the mysterious monster in front of him with Reiki energy soaring into the sky. "What exactly are you?" Huff! In response to Chu Hen, there was only a greater number of bright and beautiful runes. Like a lion or tiger, it stepped on the air with its 4 claws and opened its mouth wide. Countless runes were like stars and meteorites being swallowed by a black hole, converging into its mouth. All the runes fused together, and an extremely restless power quietly spread out. Buzz! Along with the faintly trembling space, the cyclones in all directions rotated rapidly. Whoosh! A gush of air rushed towards Chu Hen. In an instant, illusory and transparent wind blades burst out from the monster's mouth. Swish, swish, swish! The extremely sharp wind blades tore through the air, showing the power to split everything. Facing so many intensive attacks, Chu Hen's figure continuously flashed, nimbly dodging. The wind blades that streaked across the vast sky then successively hit the cliffs of several mountain peaks behind him. The neat peaks and cliffs were directly split open. Looking at such terrifying lethality, Even Chu Hen couldn't help but slightly frown. At the same time, he was increasingly curious about this unknown monster. Ha! A loud and clear whistle resounded through the sky, and an earth-shattering cyclone gathered above the monster. Then, it leaped up and looked down at Chu Hen in front of it, opening its mouth wide. Hiss! A sharp sound of a sharp weapon piercing through the air, and a ring-shaped wind blade like a light wheel burst out. In the process of moving, the volume of the ring-shaped wind blade rapidly increased. It was like a hurricane nebula that stirred up the sun and the moon. Chu Hen's eyes darkened, secretly shocked by the strength of the other party's explosive power. 1 second before the ring-shaped wind blade fell, Chu Hen's figure leaned to the side, almost touching the wind blade to dodge. The huge and terrifying ring-shaped wind blade rapidly chopped down. Rumble, rubble burst out, and the mountain peaks exploded. An imposing mountain ridge that stretched from the east to the west was directly split into two. After dodging, Chu Hen seized the opportunity to launch a counterattack. His speed exploded, dragging a string of dazzling purple lightning in the void. Less than 100 meters away from the other party, the monster suddenly raised its front claws, and its body stood up, as if it was about to rise. Buzz, an astonishing wave of Reiki energy surged out from its body, and the monster's claws actually stretched forward, accompanied by the flow of incomparably beautiful runes. A golden beam of light suddenly crossed the sky, rushing towards Chu Hen. Still, Chu Hen didn't face it head-on. He continued to focus on dodging. Swoosh, 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 a series of light beams pierced through the sky, each emitting an extremely terrifying penetrating power. While Chu Hen dodged, he also constantly shortened the distance between him and the other party. Boom! Rumble! All kinds of runes emerged one after another, and the monster's proficiency in controlling the power of runes surpassed that of countless amazing rune master geniuses. Almost all of the runes were launched in an instant. The coordination between the runes was terrifyingly precise. Among the people Chu Hen had come into contact with, the one who had the most proficient control of runes was Senior Shi Fengzi. But compared to this mysterious monster, even Shi Fengzi felt ashamed of his own inferiority. Mountains and rivers cracked, and the sky changed color. The runes released by the mysterious monster could be described as rich and diverse, including wind, fire, dark, light. The power that erupted from each of them was no less than that of a Saint King realm martial art or secret technique. Chu Hen was even more surprised. After a series of tentative attacks, he also came to a conclusion. So that's how it is. Chu Hen's eyes revealed a hint of self-confidence. The formless emperor blade in his hand slashed out 100 zhang-long beam of light. The sword aura that was like a giant blade that could split the sky split open the incomparably chaotic energy storm in front of him. Then, it slashed towards his opponent. Wah! The monster seemed to become more and more courageous as it fought. Perhaps it had been here for too long, and now that it had finally encountered an intruder, it became more and more excited. In the face of the piercing light beam, the monster showed no intention of dodging at all. Its golden eyes flashed with a dazzling light, and it stretched out its front claws, sending out another beam of light. Bang! The two collided, and suddenly the wind and clouds exploded. Sword chi flew in all directions, and runes splashed over a kilometer. It was as if the world had exploded into a shower of sparks. Hue! At this time, a vague golden ball of light flew out of the turbulent airwaves. Although the speed of the light wasn't particularly fast, the energy fluctuations it emitted were very calm, and one couldn't even detect the slightest sign of danger. When it arrived in front of him, a trace of panic flashed across Chu Hen's eyes. Not good, Wang. Before he could finish speaking, the light suddenly bloomed. In the next moment, the blooming light immediately turned into a cylindrical binding cylinder. The binding power of the talisman array was extremely strong, and it was like an impregnable fortress. Not waiting for Chu Hen to break the shackles of the halo, a heavy breathing sound mixed with a cold, fishy wind blew towards him. The monster suddenly rushed in front of Chu-Hen, opened its abyss-like mouth, and bit toward Chu-Hen. However, at this critical moment, the panic on Chu-Hen's face suddenly turned into a frivolous smile. "You've been tricked." Purng! An incomparably heavy and violent explosion shook the sky. When the monster's huge mouth was less than 2 meters away from Chu-Hen, a black shadow that emitted a monstrous aura descended from the sky without any warning. A heavy fist that could split mountains and split the earth solidly smashed onto the opponent's head. The black airwaves swept in all directions, causing the sky to tremble. Wu, the mysterious monster, let out a roar, and its strong body was directly smashed down by the impact of the huge force. Chapter 1367. Bang! Huge waves surged and water splashed everywhere. The incomparably heavy gravitational impact was like a meteorite falling to the ground. The surface of the lake was deeply sunken, and layers of waves and tsunamis rushed to the shore. It was very spectacular. Chi-Chi, standing in the air, Chu-Hen's eyes were awe-inspiring, flashing with a trace of purple light. Then, a sharp electric arc overflowed, and the golden cylindrical halo that imprisoned him was instantly smashed like a piece of paper. The black shadow floating beside him was surrounded by a domineering aura. Its blade-like outline showed the power of a demon. Through a series of previous fights, it could be known that this mysterious monster could control many powerful rune techniques, and its control of rune power was so skilled that countless geniuses in the world were ashamed of their inferiority. It could be said that such an existence was absolutely terrifying. However, its biggest weakness was that it didn't know how to cooperate. At least in Chu-Hen's view, the other party just blindly bombarded indiscriminately, evaporating and melting the opponent in the most violent way. If it wasn't Chu-Hen here today, but someone else, perhaps that person would have already become the monster's food. However, Chu-Hen had the ability to restrain the other party the most. "Perhaps I can make up for your shortcomings," Chu-Hen murmured in a low voice, and his eyes flashed with a touch of coldness. Rumble! Before his voice died away, the ground collapsed and the mountain ridge cracked. Along with the extremely restless trembling, a mountain below was abruptly separated from the ground. Set off by a mysterious rune, it directly soared into the sky, and then like a meteorite across the sky, it whistled toward Chu-Hen. The mountain range attacked, and the black shadow covered the sky. Chu-Hen's face was calm, and his eyes were as calm as the water in an ancient well. Whoosh! The next moment, a shocking divine light traversed the sky, accompanied by endless sharp momentum, and countless sword shadows burst out from the mountain rock. Following that, the sword momentum was monstrous, and the flying mountain was instantly split in half. Rumble! The mountain range that was split in half fell to the ground from the left and right sides at the same time, crushing the mountain ridge jungle below. Chu-Hen held the formless Tharch blade, showing the power to conquer the sky. Boom! Swish! At the same time, a huge wave suddenly rose from the lake, and spiraling water columns shot into the sky like tornadoes. An extremely berserk aura, along with the majestic power of runes, exploded from the bottom of the water in all directions. Roar! A roar that was many times more powerful than the one before reverberated through the air, setting off heavy waves. In an instant, a behemoth that was hundreds of meters long filled up more than half of the lake. It had sharp claws, a tree-trunk body, a pair of eyes that glowed with a golden light, and a huge mouth that was like an abyss. Countless water pillars rapidly gathered above its head. Chu-Hen's eyes darkened slightly, and his face revealed some caution. What a shocking water rune energy! In just a few seconds, all the water in the lake that spanned thousands of meters was emptied. The vast and majestic torrents surged into the sky and gathered in one place. Jia! Suddenly, the mysterious monster let out a sharp cry. The heaven and earth moved, and the wind and clouds changed color. An abnormally malevolent blue wave aquatic beast suddenly rushed out of the torrent. The aquatic beast's body was like a whale shark, and its head was like a flood dragon. It surged with a heaven-shaking divine might and countless water vortexes as it pounced towards Chu Hen. The attack was strong and the momentum was ferocious. Even Chu Hen couldn't avoid it. The mountain-like pressure attacked with a crushing force, and the space around Chu Hen faintly twisted and swayed. However, Chu Hen's eyes didn't have the slightest hint of panic. His pupils reflected the blue wave aquatic beast in front of him, and then an incomparably fierce aura erupted from Chu Hen's body without any warning. Roar, a dragon's roar of the 9 heavens reverberated for thousands of miles. In the next instant, there was a bang sound and a berserk power spread out in all directions. An incomparably majestic scene appeared between the heavens and the earth. A terrifying giant dragon skeleton emitting a tyrannical aura shot into the heavens. It was as if it had passed through a giant ball of water and solidly collided with the blue wave aquatic beast. The air shook incessantly. The aftermath of the water mist that spread in all directions swept outwards. Within a radius of more than 100 miles, the wind and rain immediately descended. Large and small waves baptized the mountains, rivers, and earth. The giant dragon skeleton was like a tyrannical zombie. Wherever its bone claws and sharp teeth went, there was nothing it couldn't destroy. It instantly tore apart the enormous body of the blue wave aquatic beast, directly smashing it into pieces. Following that, it exploded into violent waves that filled the sky. However, this wasn't the end. The tyrannical zombie dragon skeleton broke through the layers of water waves, dragging along a shocking ferocious aura. It was like a divine beast that could tear apart the sky, diving straight down and pouncing towards the unknown monster. It was very obvious that the monster was facing Chu Hen for the first time, and the strength of his trump card was also unexpected. It raised its head high, and thick Reiki energy surged wantonly. Boom! In the next second, the giant dragon skeleton swooped down, heavily bombarding the opponent's body. The riverbed under its body rapidly caved in, forming a huge sinkhole. Countless fault cracks spread out like a spider web. At the same time that the ground collapsed, the mysterious monster quickly retreated. Whoosh! It was also at this time that a piercingly cold sound of breaking wind suddenly attacked from the side. The mysterious monster's head turned, and before it could react, a domineering and peerless black shadow was reflected in its golden pupils. Bang! The dull tremor was abnormally solid and fierce. An especially solid fist pillar that could explode the Milky Way heavily struck the side of the monster's spine. A circle of black light spread out, and the monster let out a cry of pain. The side of its body was like damaged bark, rapidly splitting open. Under the huge impact, the monster smashed down in midair, dragging a drag mark that was hundreds of meters long on the ground. Wah! The mysterious monster on the ground was furious and violent. It did not care about the injuries it had suffered, and it was especially furious as it climbed out of the rubble. However, before it could stand up, the sky was covered with dark clouds. A strong wind blew, and a cold current wreaked havoc. Wind and sand piled up between heaven and earth, and an ancient and primordial aura suddenly filled the sky and the earth. Buzz, buzz! In an instant, a black stone tablet that glowed with a dusty aura for a long time suddenly appeared above the mysterious monster's head. It was a mottled stone tablet that had been around for a long time. It was covered with unpredictable runes and patterns, numbers and patterns. As the stone tablet fell from the sky, it rapidly enlarged. Looking at the ancient stone tablet that was suppressing it, an unconcealable fear and panic emerged in the mysterious monster's eyes. The great path divine stone, suppress all demons, take the sun and the moon. Bang! A loud sound that shook 1,000 miles, turned into 1,000 feet large great path divine stone, firmly suppressing the unknown monster's body. The ground once again exploded into countless pieces. The rubble that flew randomly was like a flock of startled birds and beasts that filled the sky. Woo! Heh! The unknown monster that was pressed down by the great path divine stone constantly let out ear-piercing screams. It was like an unyielding and frightening monster, its 4 claws firmly dug into the ground, using all its strength to support its sturdy body, trying to forcefully struggle out. An endless stream of Reiki energy surged out. The ancient patterns on the great path divine stone also faintly flickered with a soft light. Under the monster's stubborn struggle, the 1,000-foot stone tablet actually shook slightly. Seeing this scene, Chu Hen was even more shocked. What is the origin of this thing? Even the great path divine stone can't suppress it. Although this stone tablet was only a fragment of the great path divine stone, this was definitely not a factor in doubting its power. Even Chu Hen, right now, was only a preliminary glimpse of its divine power. And, not only did this mysterious monster control an extremely shocking rune technique, it also possessed extraordinary defensive power. In a situation where it suffered 2 heavy blows in a row, it could still be so violent and uneasy. It was truly surprising. However, the more the monster acted like this, it made Chu Hen even more certain of his thoughts. His gaze was somewhat heated as he looked at the mysterious monster that was raging like a tiger in a cage. An inexplicable trace of joy appeared at the corner of his mouth. Chapter 1368. Woo! In the boundless mountain ridge, there were incessant roars of strange beasts. It was as if they were trapped in a cage. Their limbs were chained and they were struggling with all their might. After an unknown period of time, the roars gradually weakened. The majestic mountains and rivers were quickly drawn closer. A huge crater that looked like a meteorite had smashed into the ground. The crater was surrounded by large and small rocks and cracks. The black monument that was thousands of feet tall was like a majestic ancient pillar that stood under the sky. On the left side of the monument, a giant dragon skeleton that looked like a violent zombie stood in the sky. On the right side, a black shadow that emitted a mysterious aura was like a demon in the darkness. Such a shocking lineup was just to suppress the unknown monster that controlled the powerful rune power. Whoosh! At this moment, the mysterious monster was lying on the ground, exhausted. The monument on its body was like a huge mountain, making it unable to move. A pair of beastly eyes that shone with golden light also appeared dim, with a bit of vigilance and coldness staring at the young figure standing on a stone slope in front of it. It really could not understand how the seemingly small human in front of it could have such a shocking divine power. Chu Hen's gaze was indifferent as he looked at the other party. Between his brows, an indescribable interest was faintly revealed. A species that can swallow the street tree. I wonder if you are willing to be used by me? As soon as he said this, the mysterious monster's face suddenly surged with ferocity. Its sharp claws scratched the ground back and forth, and a low roar came from its throat. Woo! The corner of Chu Hen's mouth lifted slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. I am not asking for your opinion. If you cooperate a little, woo! The monster was getting more and more angry. It twisted its huge body and tried to break free. However, at this moment it was already exhausted. The divine Tao stone only produced a slight rhythm, and it did not even shake. At the same time, Chu Hen put his palms together, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Hua! His Naiwan palace was completely opened, and Reiki energy erupted like a sea of smoke. Wherever the Reiki energy went, it quickly transformed into thousands of extravagant rune numbers. The runes, which exuded a powerful aura, arranged themselves in an orderly manner, then interweaved into a series of ever-changing, luxurious runes. Buzz, the runes crisscrossed and revolved around each other. For example, the ancient vines that extended out from the ground, with the divine Tao stone as the center point, surrounded the surroundings, forming a majestic and dazzling formation. Chu Hen formed a seal with both hands and changed it unhurriedly. Crack! The soil on the ground cracked open, and green sprouts that looked like emerald crystals drilled out of the cracks at a speed visible to the naked eye. The green bud quickly grew into a sapling. Following that, the sapling grew at a speed many times faster than normal. In an instant, it became a dozen meters, dozens of meters, 100 meters, 1,000 feet. Crash! In an instant, with the divine Tao stone as the center, dozens of lush trees that blotted out the sky rose into the air. Every tree glowed with an extraordinary light, and the branches and leaves flickered with the light of runes. The trunks and branches of the trees were covered with complicated runes. Compared to ordinary Tao trees, these trees exuded an even more extraordinary and refined aura of immortal energy. Seeing these extravagant and extraordinary street tree, the mysterious monster's gaze became more and more uneasy, and its struggle became more and more intense. Squeak, squeak, then, one after another, sturdy tree vine branches, like huge tentacles that extended from the ground, wrapped around the monster's limbs, torso, and neck. Suddenly, Chu Hen's eyes suddenly opened, and a bright and beautiful rune light flickered in his eyes. The moment the last seal was completed, the butterfly-like runes that filled the sky converged into the formation below. Rise. Buzz, the mountains, rivers, and earth trembled, and the space around them fluctuated uneasily. Countless rays of light from the glorious sun glowed, and a giant pillar of light shot into the sky, as if opening a dimensional passage to another world, immediately enveloping the mysterious monster. Wu, accompanied by a sharp and ear-piercing howl, the mysterious monster's huge body rapidly shrank, and like a whirlpool of light, it turned into a phantom, and merged with the pillar of light. Chu Hen's Mudpill Palace. The dense aura of immortal clouds surrounded every corner of the Mudpill Palace. It was the same as the purple mansion of true essence. Similarly, it had formed an independent small world. In it, one could see the spirit of the sun, moon, and stars in the outside world, and it could also gather the aura of all living things. But the difference between the two was that the purple mansion of true essence was the Saint Soul, while the Mudpill Palace was based on the street tree. In the center of the forest of plants and mountains, a towering tree stood at the top of the Mudpill Palace like a divine tree. It had a majestic aura, as if it was below the Pan River Mountain, and up to the sky. Looking from afar, the divine tree's entire body was beautiful and resplendent. Every single leaf was like a dense cluster of stars, very dazzling. If others were to see this, they would definitely be amazed. It was clearly only at the level of a guru, but the Reiki energy released by the street tree was not something a guru of the same level could compare to. Now, Chu Hen's street tree had already merged perfectly with the Divine Talisman Spirit Tree. With the Divine Talisman Spirit Tree as the foundation, it was no different from being reborn. At this moment, under the majestic Divine Talisman Street Tree, there was a violent monster being suppressed. Illusory chains that originated from underground bound the monster's limbs and neck, and an endless stream of Reiki energy swept over, entering its body through the illusory chains, and turning into thousands of strange talismans that wrapped around its body. Woo! What? The chains were stretched to the limit, and the mysterious monster let out a long roar, as if it was a stubborn creature that refused to yield. However, as more and more mysterious runes covered its body, its aura was quickly being suppressed. Serve me for 1,000 years, and after that, I will return you your freedom. Suddenly, Chu Hen's voice was full of the prestige of an emperor. Buzz, buzz, a dreamy distortion appeared in the void, as if space was moving and overlapping with each other. Then, a pair of demonic and extraordinary purple eyes slowly appeared in the sky in front of the street tree. The purple eyes were demonic and mysterious. When the mysterious monster saw the pair of demonic eyes, its entire body trembled, and fear appeared in its golden eyes. It was like a subject standing in front of a monarch. After a short moment of absent-mindedness, the mysterious monster raised its head and let out a long roar. Woo! In the next moment, the monster's body shone brightly, and a series of mysterious runes wrapped around its body emitted a dazzling light. In an instant, a vast power of runes surged out and exploded in Chu Hen's Niwen palace. Rumble, the world was in turmoil, and the world was in turmoil. The huge immortal talisman street tree shook violently, and the giant tree that covered the entire area moved again. Like a dragon hiding deep underground, it extended deeper and further. The branches and leaves stretched out and spiritual light swayed. The two different energy auras began to fuse. It was like the convergence of the sea and the river. It set off monstrous waves. Buzz. At the same time, Chu Hen, who was standing in front of the divine stone of the Great Path, suddenly opened his eyes, and two rays of starlight shot out from his eyes. An unparalleled aura swept out from his body in all directions uncontrollably. The stone slope beneath him instantly shattered, and countless crisscrossing cracks rapidly spread out. Chapter 1369. Buzz Buzz, the aura was as misty as mist, drifting between the mountains, rivers, heaven and earth. The original Mud Pill Palace had already evolved from a tiny place into an independent world that was vast and boundless with an infinite amount of spirit power. From time to time, every corner of the Mud Pill Palace would produce an obscure energy fluctuation. In the rivers and jungles, runes could be seen flashing everywhere. Surrounded by abundant Reiki energy, a giant street tree stood between the heavens and the earth, with its lower body covering hundreds of miles of mountains and rivers. At this moment, Chu Hen Street Tree was nearly twice as big as before. Even its height had increased by 5,000 to 6,000 feet. Whether it was the intensity of the Reiki energy or the intensity of its power, it was far more powerful than before. The giant street tree was like a divine tree that connected the heavens and the earth. Its trunk was covered with many complicated patterns. At the top of the street tree, there was a strange beast pattern. The beast pattern looked like a treant, but its claws were as sharp as a beast. It was mysterious and peculiar, like an ancient creature. Buzz Buzz, suddenly, the beast pattern glowed with a slight rhythm of Reiki energy. The surrounding runes lit up, and the pattern also released a beautiful, soft light. Following that, the pattern seemed to come to life. As the runes intertwined with each other, the phantom of a mysterious monster was slowly projected. The monster raised its head to the sky and let out a long roar. Its sharp and resonant voice was like a sharp sword that pierced through the sky, reaching the azure sky behind the layers of clouds. Woo! The mighty sound waves spread in all directions, wandering between the mountains and rivers. At the peak of the mountain, at the edge of a steep cliff, Chu Hen's eyelids slightly opened, and his deep eyes revealed a star-like brilliance and domineering aura. The invisible aura was like the sun and the moon. Standing above the mountains and rivers, he was like a proud and aloof king. Feeling the vigorous Reiki energy in his Niwen palace that was like a sea of smoke, as well as the vast amount of real core energy in his purple palace of real core energy, Chu Hen let out a long sigh of relief. There was a kind of cold arrogance on his handsome face that could make one's heart throb. At this moment, Chu Hen could clearly sense that his cultivation had surpassed the Third Order Holy King realm and was infinitely close to the Fourth Order Holy King realm. He had just broken through to the Saint King realm not long ago. The growth of his cultivation base could be described as 1,000 miles in a single day. However, to Chu Hen, this wasn't something that was too good of a thing. This was because most of the factors that contributed to the growth of these powers came from the series of massacres over the past few days. Chi Tian's order, heretical god force. It seemed to be gradually waking up again. The Chi Tian token was a supreme treasure from the same era as the divine stone of the Great Tao. However, it was an extremely evil object. The divine restriction blood prison blood that it came from was a place where the source of great calamity, the Lord of all evil, was gathered. In that place, slaughter ruled over everything, and destruction was the main path of kings. It was a place where all things wailed, and it was like an azure purgatory. It was precisely because of this that killing could infinitely increase the power of the Chi Tian token. Once upon a time, Chu Hen had killed hundreds of thousands of people in the victorious East Province, and he had almost fallen into the demon Dao. Although the number of people killed by Chu Hen during the Holy War was not as crazy as before, the cultivation of those who died was far higher than those in the victorious East Province. There were as many as 6 monstrous geniuses on the Windcloud list. There were also 4 Saint King Realm and Saint Inscription Masters. Especially after killing ThunderClan's Lei Yuan and the others, as well as slaughtering the entire Soaring Cloud sect, the evil aura that Chu Hen had suppressed for less than 2 years was quietly awakened. The great evil hidden at the bottom of the dark abyss in his heart seemed to quietly open its bloodthirsty eyes again. The heretical god force, which was infused with slaughter and destruction, was reignited. A series of harvesting and hunting also caused Chu Hen's cultivation base to grow rapidly. Fortunately, the improvement of Chu Hen's cultivation base was not solely supported by the Qitian token. In addition, there was also the fusion of the non-phase Emperor Blade's artifact soul, the energy explosion of the 4 soul spirits, and even a part of the underworld fire Heavenly Thunder that was plundered from Lei Yuan. The combination of various forces allowed Chu Hen to sublimate at a leaping speed. I can't let the Qitian token's power continue to grow. I must find a way to suppress it, Chu Hen muttered to himself. Now that Emo Qingli was not around, Chu Hen could only rely on himself. The best way to suppress the Qitian token was to improve his cultivation base and bloodline boundary in the normal way. There was no other way. I'll just take one step at a time. Taking a deep breath, Chu Hen did not intend to stay here any longer. His eyes flashed, and then a strange spatial rhythm spread out with Chu Hen as the center. The incomparably luxurious ice palace. Every building was as beautiful as glazed jade, making people gasp in admiration. Buzz! On the majestic palace pillars, runes flashed and overflowed with colorful lights. Accompanied by the swaying of secret scrolls, a vortex appeared in the space. Then, an illusory white light flashed out from the distorted space. Immediately, the white light turned into a human figure and steadily landed on the ground. Brother Chu Hen, a familiar voice full of excitement immediately came. Before Chu Hen could stand firm, he was hugged tightly by Yi Yao. Brother Chu Hen, where did you go? I was almost scared to death by you. Yi Yao's voice was a little sobbing, obviously carrying a lot of uneasiness. Woo! Not far away, the yin-yang beast Noni also called out in a low voice, as if it was welcoming Chu Hen's return. All right, aren't I fine now? Chu Hen smiled a little helplessly, then gently let go of her. However, when he saw Yi Yao's slightly red eyes, he couldn't help but feel a little apologetic. I'm sorry I made you worry. After saying that, he gently patted Yi Yao's head. Yi Yao sniffled, as if she was a little wronged. Although she had already stepped into the ranks of Saint Kings, in front of Chu Hen, she was still as pure as the little girl in the past. Brother Chu Hen, where have you been for the past 10 days? Noni and I have searched the entire Ice Emperor Palace, but we couldn't find you. 10 days? Chu Hen was startled and shook his head in surprise. It's been so long? He originally thought it would be 2 or 3 days at most, but he didn't expect the difference to be so big. I went to look for the street tree, Chu Hen said, and casually glanced at Sidu Xiao, who was still lying next to the palace pillar. Sidu Xiao's body was already covered with a thick layer of ice, and he looked like an ice sculpture, completely imprisoned by the ice. Did you find it? Yi Yao asked with her eyes wide open. Chu Hen smiled slightly. Yes, I found it. Looking at Chu Hen's gentle smile, Yi Yao was a little surprised. Brother Chu Hen has changed back. What? Chu Hen didn't quite understand. Yi Yao smiled and shook her head. After pausing for a moment, Chu Hen immediately understood what he meant. Previously, because of Qi Tianling, his aura was quite cold. Now that the power of the runes had broken through, and together with the power of the mysterious monster, Qi Tianling's evil aura was suppressed to a certain extent. How is Long Xuanxuang? Chu Hen glanced at the magnificent palace in the center. At the moment, the stone door of the palace was still closed, and there was no sound at all. Yi Yao looked a little curious. I don't know, there's been no movement these days. Chu Hen nodded slightly, and there was some deep meaning in his eyes. I'm afraid it's not that fast. At this time, the outcome depended on Long Xuanxuang's fate. After thinking for a short while, Chu Hen looked back at Yi Yao. Chapter 1370. In the extreme chill ice domain, 2 human silhouettes and a beast silhouette slowly walked out of the Ice Emperor's palace, which was as luxurious as the work of God. As he did not know how long it would take for Long Xuanxuang to come out, Chu Hen did not plan to continue waiting here. After all, in this holy war, time was an opportunity. Before this ended, there might be other opportunities. Even if Chu Hen and Yi Yao stayed here, they would not be able to help Long Xuanxuang at all. After weighing the pros and cons, they could temporarily leave. Brother Chu Hen, what if the people from Wind Frost City come back? Yi Yao said with a little worry. Chu Hen shook his head slightly. He was not worried at all. If they wanted to come, they would have come a long time ago. From Sidu Zhao's self-introduction, he knew that he was the second young master of Wind Frost City. Since he was a person of noble status, the people from Wind Frost City would naturally come back to seek revenge. However, it had already been more than 10 days, and they had not appeared. It could be said that they were delayed by other things. Moreover, it was very likely that they thought that by the time they rushed here, Chu Hen and the others would have already left, and that they would come empty-handed. However, no matter what the reason was, the probability of them coming back after such a long time was not very high. However, even if there was a slight possibility that they would come here, the Ice Palace's restriction defense was enough to block them outside, and Long Xuanxuang would not be disturbed. Of course, the most important point was that when Chu Hen left, he had set up a rune imprint. If there were any changes here, even if it was thousands of miles away, Chu Hen would still be able to sense it. He did not have to worry about leaving Long Xuanxuang here. After leaving the land of extreme coldness, 2 people and 1 beast headed north. This was the opposite direction from where the martial sect had opened the ruins. It was also the direction of the Chaos Devil Domain's central area. The ancient mountains and rivers were everywhere. Every inch of the Chaos Devil Domain's land exuded the sorrowful aura of the past. At the peak of a ravine, Chu Hen stood on top of a broken cliff. His gaze was distant as he looked at the scene within the ravine. There were many skeletons piled up in the valley. There were humans, demon beasts, and some unknown monsters that looked like humans but were not beasts. Broken halberds sank into the sand, blunt blades, and rusty swords. A cold wind blew past, and a low whistling sound resounded in the valley, like the sad song that had been sung for thousands of years. Pulling back his thoughts, Chu Hen turned to look at Yi Yao not far away. He saw that she was carving some strange patterns on the wall with a stone. "What are you doing?" Chu Hen asked. "Leave a road sign for Sister Xian Shuang, tell her where we're going." Yi Yao explained to Chu Hen while pointing at the pattern. "Brother Chu Hen, look, this snowflake pattern represents frost. Sister Xian Shuang will definitely recognize it. Then, this arrow is the direction we're going." Xian was serious. Xian Chu Xian, who would notice this kind of thing? But since Yi Yao had already drawn it, it was not good for him to discourage her. Woo! Suddenly, Yin-Yang Beast Noni, who was squatting on a hanging wall in front of them, suddenly stood up. A pair of vertical cat eyes stared at the west side of the canyon in surprise. "What's wrong, Noni?" Yi Yao, who had just finished the last stroke, asked. Noni responded and then leaped up. His 4 paws stepped on the yin-yang cyclone and flew in that direction. Chu Hen and Yi Yao looked at each other and couldn't help but feel puzzled. "Noni should have found something," Yi Yao said. Chu Hen nodded slightly. "Let's go and see." Soon after, the 2 of them soared into the sky and followed behind Noni. After passing through two majestic mountains that were as majestic as giant dragons, a canyon that was even more spectacular than the one they had just passed appeared in their vision from afar. The steep rock walls on both sides of the canyon were like giant eagles poking their heads out. In the valley, one could see a waterfall hanging high in the air and plants growing everywhere. In the depths of the canyon, there were still many ancient buildings standing tall. Many buildings with a desolate aura were like scattered stars in the canyon, displaying a majestic aura. At the center, there was a Zen platform with a majestic aura. On the Zen platform stood a forest of heavenly pillars, a bridge that spanned across the moon, and a three-legged cauldron was placed in the middle. Even though the gorge was vast and spectacular, the height of the meditation platform had already surpassed the top of the gorge. The majestic atmosphere was like the place where the emperor of the empire worshipped the heaven. However, what truly attracted Chu Hen's and Chu Li's attention was the small-scale battle that was currently erupting at this place. It was obvious that the people fighting were from two different factions. Moreover, there were several other groups of people gathered around the canyon. Although the scene was not particularly chaotic, the atmosphere was obviously restless and uncontrollable. Perhaps because everyone's attention was focused on the battle, coupled with people from other directions being attracted here from time to time, few people noticed the arrival of Chu Hen and Yi Yao. The two of them were like low-key spectators. They didn't disturb anyone as they stopped on a relatively deserted platform to watch the fight. There were about 17 or 18 people fighting. The leader of one side had a threatening sword aura and a sharp aura. At a glance, it was obvious that he was a master who specialized in swordsmanship. On the other side, there were several young and graceful women. The woman at the head of the group was light and dexterous, like a dragonfly touching the water, constantly changing her position as she fought with the sword wielder. Even though it was a small-scale battle, the aura that erupted from both sides made everyone present feel fearful. There was no doubt that the leaders of both sides had reached the Saint King realm. They seemed to be from ruling sword sect? Yi Yao whispered to Chu Hen. She had dealt with ruling sword sect twice before. From the other party's attire and the fact that most of them were sword cultivators, she could determine with certainty that one of them was from ruling sword sect. I wonder who the other side is. Yi Yao's eyes were filled with doubt. Huan Yu Hall. Chu Hen replied. Huan Yu Hall? Yi Yao was startled. She was still a little unfamiliar with this name. How do you know? Chu Hen nodded slightly and raised his eyebrows. I've seen one of them before. While saying this, Chu Hen's gaze passed through the chaotic crowd in front of him and landed on another young woman with a graceful figure in the middle of the melee. The woman had a seductive temperament and her body was like a boneless snake that could twist to an extent that ordinary people could not achieve. And Chu Hen had seen this person before. In addition to being wary of the two sides fighting on the field, the others present also intentionally or unintentionally glanced towards a wide rooftop on the east side of the canyon. There were two forces that could not be ignored gathered there. Huan Yu Hall and ruling sword sect have already taken action, so why haven't Profound Yang Palace and Parallel Heaven Pavilion made a move? They must be waiting to reap the benefit. Damn, ruling sword sect and Huan Yu Hall are already helpless, and now even Profound Yang Palace and Parallel Heaven Pavilion have come. For Saint Kings, how are we supposed to survive? Don't worry, as the saying goes, sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. No one knows what will happen until the end. Heh, that's right. What if they end up fighting? At this moment, the teams from Profound Yang Palace and Parallel Heaven Pavilion were standing together. They were led by He Yen and Yang Su, two Saint King realm geniuses on the professional list. A group of people with ulterior motives are all looking forward to us killing each other so they can reap the benefit. Profound Yang Palace's He Yan's long crimson hair was particularly eye-catching. He raised his crimson eyebrows lightly as a disdainful sneer appeared on his face. Parallel Heaven Pavilion's Yang Su crossed his arms in front of him as a trace of disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth. They're just a bunch of nobodies. They're really naive. In the eyes of others, ruling sword sect and Huan Yu Hall were currently engaged in a fierce battle, and there would still be benefits to be gained after both sides suffered. But in reality, Yang Su and He Yen could see very clearly that both ruling sword sect and Huan Yu Hall were holding back because they knew the current situation very well. Once they went all out, it would benefit others in the end. I'm afraid they won't be able to determine a victor even if they fight for an entire day and night. If this continues, it will only attract more fishermen, Yang Su said with narrowed eyes. He Yen raised his gaze slightly and asked with interest, I wonder what Brother Yang thinks. Heh heh. Yang Su laughed indifferently. If you and I were to join hands, who here would be able to stop us? After he finished speaking, Yang Su's gaze directly swept towards the towering and imposing meditation platform. In the center of the platform, where many heavenly pillars stood, the three-legged cauldron displayed the power to suppress the mountains and rivers of the world. If one were to observe carefully, they would discover that the cauldron was covered with many mysterious talismans. An invisible aura prevented everyone from approaching. Hearing Yang Su's words, He Yan's eyes flashed with a bright light. Heh heh, Brother Yang's thoughts coincide with mine. That's good. When do we make our move? No rush. Yang Su raised his hand slightly, and his gaze once again turned towards the battle between the ruling sword sect and Huan Yu Hall. Let them exhaust themselves first. He Yen nodded in agreement. Both of them knew very well that once either of them made a move, the others would rush forward to stop them. Currently, the only ones who could restrain the profound Yang Palace and Parallel Heaven Pavilion were the ruling sword sect and Huan Yu Hall. Therefore, the more they consumed, the more advantageous it would be for the two of them. Bam! The sword and palm clashed, causing light to fly everywhere. Although due to the current circumstances, the battle between the Imperial Sword Sect and the Huan Yu Hall was not a life-and-death battle. After fighting for so long, it was inevitable that both sides would get angry. Hee, I say, Senior Brother Sinyi, can't you let me go this time? The woman in the lead of the Huan Yu Hall's laughter was as clear and melodious as a silver bell. She was as elegant as a spirit butterfly, and her movement technique was like a falling flower that filled the sky. Her attacks were also gentle and nimble, giving people a visual pleasure. Humph, shut up, bitch. The young man called Sun Yi could be said to be as fast as lightning. His sword force was so strong that it was comparable to the arrival of a storm. I Qingyan am just a weak woman. I wonder what I did to make Senior Brother Sun Yi so angry? Humph, stop pretending in front of me. With a flip of his hand, Sun Ye's sword descended. The extremely sharp heaven-splitting sword beam was like a giant blade in the air. Qing Yan immediately dodged, and the rock wall behind him immediately split in half. A huge ravine that ran through the cliff rapidly expanded up and down. Qing Yan frowned slightly and said with a hint of anger, Isn't your Imperial Sword Sect being too much of a bully? You're still pretending. Let me ask you, what is your intention in sowing discord? Sowing discord? Qing Yan was a little surprised. What do you mean by sowing discord? I don't understand what you're talking about. Humph, continue pretending. First, you said that my junior brother Luo Lu died in the hands of the Beichen art in the northern ice domain, and then you instigated Lu Qian to go and suppress him. What are your intentions? Just as he finished speaking, a coquettish and shrill laughter came from the other side. I say, Senior Brother Sun Ye's words are too hurtful. I told you the news of Luo Lu's death out of goodwill, but not only did you not appreciate it, you even suspected that we were deceiving you. Flower snake, shut up. The young man who was fighting with the coquettish woman scolded coldly. Senior Brother Lu Qian personally verified it. It's not like what you said at all. Is that so? Then call Lu Qian out. I'll ask him how he verified it. Humph, senior brother Lu Qian is already dead. Ha 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 ha, no wonder you want to vent your anger on us. So that's how it is. You're courting death. The young man's eyes spat out flames of anger. The sharp sword in his hand vibrated with an impassioned sound. Sword intent stacked up like a storm as he stabbed straight at his opponent's vitals. Flower Snake did not panic at all. Just as her opponent's sword was about to pierce her heart, Flower Snake's body suddenly twisted into a slender snake's body. Her opponent's sword missed, and before he could make a follow-up move, a whip-like snake tail heavily swept across the young man's chest. Bang! With a muffled sound, the man flew towards the mountain wall at the back of the canyon as if he had been struck by a thunderbolt. The crowd that had gathered at the back to watch the battle quickly dodged to the left and right. With another few heavy rumbles, the man directly smashed into an unremarkable platform at the edge of the cliff. Ha ha ha, useless thing! Flower Snake laughed in a pleased manner. But in the next instant, her laughter came to an abrupt halt. At the same time, a pair of slightly astonished eyes stared at the other two figures at the back of the platform in surprise. To be precise, it was one of the two figures. Chapter 1371. The one who killed Luolu, didn't he? A charming smile appeared on Flower Snake's face, as if she had discovered the most interesting thing in the world. Her words were like a tranquil needle that instantly froze everyone in the room. Sun Yi, Qin Yan, and the rest all stopped fighting at the same time, their faces filled with shock. What did you say? A disciple of the Imperial Sword Gate shouted. The corner of Flower Snake's mouth twitched. He shook his body in midair, and his slender body immediately returned to normal. She gently lifted her willow branch-like arm and pointed her finger at the inconspicuous platform. Brother, long time no see. You came at the right time. I can't forget how you killed Luolu with a star battle seal in the North Ice region. The Flower Snake's charming smile was like a poisonous black rose. It was bright and frightening. Her words instantly attracted everyone's attention. Everyone's gaze followed the direction she was pointing at. On the half-collapsed platform, a young man and a young woman with calm and steady auras stood side by side. Beside them was a well-built black and white little beast. No one noticed their arrival just now, but in the blink of an eye, they had become the focus of everyone's attention. Who is this? I don't know. I don't think I've seen him before. This person killed Luolu. Everyone whispered to each other. They didn't seem to believe it. Although Luolu could not be counted as a first-rate genius, he was still considered to have a bit of fame. There were still a few people who knew him. Chu Hen looked to be too young, and was not a person with great methods like what Flower Snake said. But Flower Snake wouldn't just throw the blame at anyone, so everyone was surprised. At the same time, the profound Yang Palace and the Heaven-Gathering Pavilion were restless. This was especially true for Lethal Elegance Lu Weiyue and Ten-Feathered Demonic Blade Li Yanqing. It's him. Yi Yao's brows furrowed slightly as the crowd gathered around her. A hint of wariness appeared on her face. On the other hand, Chu Hen's face was calm. He looked straight at Flower Snake's seductive face without any change in his emotions. It has indeed been a long time. The moment he said that, the gazes of everyone from the Imperial Sword Gate sank slightly. Chu Hen's words directly indicated that he had indeed met Viper before. A young man from the Imperial Sword School raised his sword and questioned, "Did you really kill Luolu?" Chu Hen glanced at him indifferently, an invisible arrogance mixed with a bit of indifference. "I killed him." He directly admitted it. He didn't hide it at all. Flower Snake smiled. His smile was especially proud. Qin Yan and the others from Huanyu Hall also revealed expressions of watching the show. "Not just Luolu, I killed Lu Qian too," Chu Hen said calmly. It was as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him at all. He was so calm that it made people feel an inexplicable palpitation. "You! The disciple from the Imperial Sword Gate who asked the question was directly shocked by Chu Hen's indifference and immediately lost his confidence. Especially the moment he met Chu Hen's deep gaze, a fear that came from the depths of his soul arose spontaneously. The hand that held the sword began to tremble, and the words that he wanted to say were directly stuck in his throat. This person does have some skill. He Yen of the profound Sun Palace said in a deep voice to Heaven-Gathering Pavilion's Yang Su. The latter also nodded. If he fights with the Imperial Sword Gate, it will also be beneficial to us. No matter what the situation is, it will be beneficial to us. He Yen and Yang Su looked at each other, and a sinister sneer appeared on their faces. However, the two of them, who had ulterior motives, didn't notice Lu Wuyue and Li Yanqing, who were shivering in the group behind them. It wasn't just Luo Lu. There was also Lu Qian. When they heard these two sentences, everyone from the Imperial Sword Gate immediately pulled out their swords. Whoosh, a piercingly cold, killing intent spread out like a gust of cold wind. Each of them revealed a fierce expression as they stared at Chu Hen and Li Yanqing. The young man called Sen Yi stared coldly at Chu Hen's calm and handsome face. His throat moved up and down as he coldly spat out a few words. Who exactly are you? Who? This was also the question that the others present were curious about. Chu Hen looked straight at the other party's sword-like gaze. Martial ancestor, Chu Hen, Hua. The voice wasn't loud, but it was deafening to everyone's ears like a clap of thunder. In an instant, the entire canyon was in an uproar. Everyone's faces were filled with dense shock. What? He's Chu Hen? He's the one who led the martial ancestor to slaughter the Lingyun sex group? He's too young. No wonder he dared to come here alone. It's said that Thunderbolt Han Li Xiong and Divine Sword Qi Si were both killed by him. Other than Yuan Yi who escaped, everyone from the Lingyun sect was massacred. He's really a ruthless character. The way they looked at Chu Hen instantly changed. If someone mentioned the name Chu Hen 10 days ago, it was believed that not many people had heard of it. However, in these few days, these two words struck the eardrums of countless people like thunder. The reason was all because of the Lingyun sect. This top sect that stood above many first-rate forces had been massacred in the battle at the Sky Lake, washing 1,000 miles in blood. Other than Yuan Yi who escaped, no one else survived. Without a doubt, this was definitely one of the most shocking events in the history of the Holy War. All the disciples of the sect were killed. It could not be said that it wasn't cruel. It could not be said that it was not shocking. It could not be said that it did not make people's scalps numb. When the world found out that the one who massacred the Lingyun sect was a martial arts sect, it caused a huge commotion. Everyone knew that during the last Holy War, the martial arts sect met with the Lingyun sect. It was extremely tragic, especially when all the top geniuses of the martial arts sect who had the bloodline of the saint body were all crippled. It caused many people to feel sympathy. Now the cycle had changed. The martial arts sect used an even more ruthless and overbearing method to massacre the Lingyun sect, shocking everyone. As for the Chu Hen, who had almost single-handedly turned the tide and heavily injured one of the 3 geniuses on the ranking of the cloud-soaring school and killed 2 of them, his reputation rose even more, and he became impatient to be called to the Holy War. At this moment, everyone understood that the inconspicuous person in front of them was the real ruthless character. He is Chu Hen? On the profound Yang Palace's side, Yang Su's and He Yan's faces were as pale as paper. The sinister smiles that hung on their faces a second ago had disappeared without a trace, replaced by unconcealable fear and unease. At the same time, over at the Huanyu Palace, everyone fell into silence. This was especially so for Flower Snake. Her previous complacency had completely disappeared. Although she knew that the person who killed Luo Lu with the North Star Art was a martial arts sect disciple, she never would have thought that the person's name was Chu Hen. Unconcealable uneasiness floated in Flower Snake's eyes. She had already indirectly offended this ruthless character who caused people to fear. The people who were in the most difficult situation were naturally the people from the Imperial Sword Gate. Sun Ye's hand that was holding the sword seemed to be slightly weak. He looked at Chu Hen and the atmosphere fell into an unprecedented state of anxiety. Chu Hen looked at everyone coldly. Chapter 1372. Those who wish to kill me, draw your sword. An invisible imposing aura swept out in all directions, and a mountain-like aura suppressed everyone present. Chu Hen stood on the platform like a king who looked down on everyone. Those who wish to kill, draw your sword. This was a provocation and a deterrent. Who wishes to kill me? Who dares to draw their sword? Chu Hen coldly looked at Sun Yi, Flower Snake, and the others in the canyon in front of him. His deep eyes were filled with arrogance and provocation. Flower Snake's expression changed again and again. Her bewitching and sharp face was filled with unease, as if she was riding a tiger. This was the source of trouble that she had singled out. If she had not deliberately stirred up trouble, Chu Hen would only be standing silently on the sidelines as a spectator. However, it was precisely because she thought herself clever that the entire Huan Yu Hall fell into an incomparably awkward situation. Flower Snake no longer spoke. More accurately speaking, she did not dare to speak again. She, who had stirred up trouble to watch the show, felt as if she had touched the whiskers of a tiger, causing the tiger to bare its sharp and cold fangs. The Imperial Sword Gate was also in a dilemma. If they retreated, the Imperial Sword Gate would definitely lose face today. However, if they advanced, they would not be a match for Chu Hen. Amidst his anxiety, Sun Ye's gaze slanted and secretly swept towards Yang Su and He Yen, who were on the other side. According to the rumors, Profound Sun Palace's Lu Minghong and Equal Heaven Pavilion's Qin Shui, the two geniuses on the honor list, had also died at the hands of Chu Hen. If they joined forces with Yang Su and He Yen, as well as Huan Yu Hall's Qin Yen, there would be a total of 4 Saint King stage experts. It was not impossible for them to defeat Chu Hen. Moreover, most of the disciples of these 4 forces were here, while there were only 2 people on Chu Hen's side. On the surface, there was no need to be afraid. The situation seemed to be surging in the dark. Yang Su and He Yen naturally understood this as well. The restlessness and coldness gradually spread. The sudden cold wind swept up the dust and sand on the ground. Everyone present seemed to have understood something and consciously retreated. In an instant, only Yi Yao and Noni were left by Chu Hen's side. The 3 figures stood alone on the platform, facing the army of the 4 great forces. Even so, there was not a hint of fear on Chu Hen's face. He was so steady that it was terrifying and so calm that it made people feel uneasy. If it was any other time, the 4 major forces would have crushed the 2 of them into dregs. But as long as they thought of the tragic end of the cloud-soaring sect, everyone actually couldn't muster up the slightest bit of courage. Regardless of whether it was Sun Yi, Yang Su or He Yen, none of them dared to rashly take the lead. As for Huan Yu Hall's Qin Yen, it was even more impossible. She didn't even want to participate. After all, there was no direct enmity between Huan Yu Palace and Chu Hen. It was just Colorful Snake acting smart and provoking Chu Hen. As long as Huan Yu Hall retreated, they would be able to escape unscathed. It was also because of this that the Imperial Sword Gate, Profound Yang Palace and Heaven Condensing Pavilion did not dare to act rashly. This was because the 3 great forces combined could not defeat a fallen Lingyun sect. Screech! Suddenly, just as everyone was feeling uneasy and unable to make a decision, a sharp and ear-piercing bird cry suddenly resounded in the sky outside the canyon. This bird cry was like a thin needle that pierced through a water ball, directly breaking the tense atmosphere on the field. Everyone subconsciously raised their heads to look at the sky, only to see a terrifying and ugly blood-red bird beast flying over. There was not a single bit of flesh on this bird beast's body, only its skeleton supporting it. Even its wings were a pair of bone wings, and its eyes, which were suffused with a bloody light, looked like an evil creature from hell. Lady Slayer Bird! It's the Lady Slayer Bird! A trembling cry of alarm rang out from the crowd. In an instant, the expressions of everyone present changed. Everyone's eyes were filled with unconcealable shock. The Lady Slayer Bird, a bloodthirsty creature. Once the Lady Slayer Bird appears, it will definitely drink blood. Could its master be here? It can't be wrong. He's here. Whoosh! A raging cold wind swept across the world, and the sky above the canyon suddenly surged. As a huge pressure shrouded the area, a bloody mist appeared in the void. Two figures gradually emerged from the bloody mist. Screech! Another long cry from the Lady Slayer Bird caused the crowd to tremble, and the surrounding beasts fled. The corner of Chu Hen's eyes slightly narrowed, and a cold expression appeared on his face. Yi Yao, who was standing to the side, had a hint of worry between her eyebrows. She had a premonition that this unfriendly arrival was related to them. Looking at the two figures that gradually walked out of the bloody mist, everyone felt extremely pressured, and they almost couldn't breathe. Shortly after, the leader of the group stood on the peak of the canyon. Everyone present, including Xin Yi, He Yen, Yang Su, Qing Yen and the other geniuses on the honor list, turned pale as their hearts quietly trembled when they sensed the powerful aura of slaughter coming from the other party's body, as well as the eyes that were filled with the signal of death. Fear. Absolute fear. If Chu Hen's appearance was said to be more shocking and fearful, then the arrival of this person was definitely filled with fear and reverence. If they were still hesitant about Chu Hen, then this person did not dare to provoke him at all. Yes, it's him. It's really him. It can't be wrong. He's the war god of slaughter. Everyone's eyes narrowed as they welcomed the arrival of this person with the most solemn expression. Sun Yi, Yang Su, and the others frowned as they muttered softly. War God Palace. Chen Lu. War God Palace. No matter who heard these three words, it was like an insurmountable mountain. It was like a colossus. Even the Imperial Sword School, Huan Yu Palace, Profound Sun Palace, and other first-rate forces of the Midland were not worth mentioning in front of the War God Palace. The name, Chen Lu, was regarded as a code for slaughter, blood, and viciousness. He was one of the 5 Saint Kings of the War God Palace. People called him the War God of Slaughter, and he was a terrifying existence ranked 19th on the wind cloud list. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air from the bottom of their hearts. It was as if being under dust murderer's pressure was an extremely dangerous thing. Oh my God! The 19th place on the wind cloud list is a height I can never reach in my life. Yes, the geniuses of the War God Palace are too terrifying. Chen Lu's cultivation is probably above the 5th order Saint King realm. Terrifying. The higher one was on the wind cloud list, the more terrifying the competition. Those who could be ranked in the top 20 were the top geniuses of the Midland. They carried too much dazzling light like the stars and the moon, making it difficult for people to reach their heights. While everyone was shocked by the arrival of the War God of Slaughter, Chen Lu, they immediately looked at the other figure behind him in surprise. Compared to Dust Slaughter's radiance, that person clearly paled in comparison. His face was gloomy and his aura was cold. The sleeve of his right hand was empty, obviously missing a large piece. That person is Yuan Yi? A slightly uncertain voice came from the crowd. Yes, it's Yuan Yi. Wow, there was an uproar. Everyone was shocked and surprised. At this moment, Yuan Yi was in dire straits. He did not have the peerless elegance of the Lingyun sect's number 1 genius. Especially when he stood next to Chen Lu, he was even more dim. Receiving the strange looks from the crowd, Yuan Yi's face became even more gloomy. His cold eyes flickered, and he looked at the young figure standing on the platform below, full of hatred and hatred. Chapter 1373. Once Lu Sun appeared, he would definitely drink blood. The sudden arrival of Chen Lu from the God of War Palace instantly dispelled the anxiety and unease that should have been present. Just one person caused the people from the ruling Sword Gate, Huanyu Hall, Profound Sun Palace, Heaven Gathering Pavilion, and the other major factions to tremble. Just as everyone was shocked by Chen Lu's arrival, they could not help but guess Chen Lu's goal when Yuan Yi followed him. The battle at the cloud-soaring sect. Only Yuan Yi had fled in panic. In less than a month, Chen Lu had come with him. His goal was obvious. "Humph, you really made it hard for me to find you." Yuan Yi's eyes were filled with unconcealable killing intent. His hatred for Chu Hen was so strong that he wanted to skin him alive. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that this scene was real. It was obvious that Chen Lu had come straight for Chu Hen. "I didn't expect Yuan Yi to seek help from the God of War Palace. Actually, I've long heard that the cloud-soaring sect was secretly connected to the God of War Palace. Now that I look at it, it seems like the rumors are not groundless. It's true. Angering the God of War Palace is the end of one's life." Everyone whispered to each other. At the same time, the way they looked at Chu Hen changed again. Her previous doubt, then fear, and now it had turned into sympathy. In everyone's eyes, if Chu Hen was a ruthless character, then Chen Lu was a ruthless character among ruthless characters. Facing the God of War Palace, a mere martial ancestor was no different from an ant. Big brother Chu Hen? Yi Yao frowned slightly, and her lily-white hands clenched into fists. Chu Hen glanced to the side, indicating that she did not need to worry. At the same time, Chen Lu's gaze swept across the people below like he was pronouncing a death sentence. "It seems like I came at the right time." His indifferent words didn't contain the slightest hint of emotion. "You all want to kill him?" Chen Lu asked with interest. The expressions of Xin Yi, Yang Su, He Yen, and the others could not help but change. It was as if Chen Lu had seen through all the thoughts in their hearts. The gap between a genius and a monster was self-evident. "Heh heh." Dust Slaughter chuckled playfully. He didn't seem to be in a hurry to make a move. He seemed to find the strange and anxious expressions of everyone present very amusing. "Those who want to kill him, you can do it now," everyone was startled. Chen Lu pointed at Chu Hen, who was still standing in his original spot. Then, he spoke to the others in an inviting manner. It was like a support from a mountain. Dust Slaughter's meaning was very simple. With him here, anyone who wanted to make a move against Chu Hen could do so. As soon as these words came out, Sun Yi, Yang Su, He Yen, and the others' eyes lit up. This was especially so for Lu Weiyue, who had a lot of resentment towards Chu Hen. Li Yanqing even clenched his fists as a gloating look appeared in his eyes. With a backer like Dust Slaughter here, what did a single Chu Hen count for? Their hesitation instantly turned into a resolute chill. The restlessness in their hearts was like a rapidly growing bud. Everyone aimed their sharp ends at Chu Hen. However, at this moment, Chu Hen's calm and unhurried words caused everyone's hearts to tremble slightly. "I'm afraid you can't be their backer." Whoosh, like a cold wind blowing past, everyone felt a chill run down their spines. Everyone stared at the calm Chu Hen as if they were looking at a monster. Is this guy really? Does he not know who he's facing? The temperature in the Great Canyon seemed to have dropped to freezing point. No one had expected Chu Hen to still be so arrogant. However, in the eyes of the crowd, this arrogance was too laughable. Defeating the Lingyun sect has already made him so arrogant that he doesn't know the situation. I think there's a bit of a problem. Didn't we also not expect the martial sect to be able to slaughter the Lingyun sect? The Lingyun sect is the Lingyun sect. The one standing in front of him now is the War God Palace. Chen Lu was not angry at all. He smiled at Chu Hen. "I didn't hear clearly just now. What did you say?" Chu Hen did not panic in the slightest as he met Chen Lu's gaze. "I said that with your ability, I'm afraid you won't be able to support them this time." It was real and extremely clear. No one present dared to make a sound. Hee hee. Dust Slaughter smiled. His smile was terrifying. Not a bad greeting. You will be the first person I remember in the Holy War. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Sen Yi from the Imperial Sword School suddenly exploded with an extremely powerful sword aura. He leaped up with his sword and formed dozens of illusory sword-light shadows in the air. Humph Chu! I'll end your arrogance on behalf of War God Chen Lu. There was no hesitation. Sen Yi completely believed in Chen Lu's ability. At the same time, He Yen from the Profound Sun Palace and Yang Su from the Heaven Gathering Pavilion also released their auras. Powerful true origin energy flowed around their bodies. In their eyes, this was not only a great opportunity to get rid of Chu Hen, but it was also a good opportunity to build a good relationship with the War God Palace. Whoosh! Sen Ye's sword aura was shocking. The sword shadows that filled the sky were like a net of stars that shrouded the world. The dazzling illusory afterimages were all pressed down. One after another, extremely sharp sword lights went straight for Chu Hen and Chu Yu who were on the platform. The surrounding people were secretly shocked. As expected of the Imperial Sword School's number one person. Each ray of sword energy was filled with the power to kill. However, in the face of such exquisite and powerful sword techniques, Chu Hen, who stood on the platform, did not move at all. In the next moment, 2 fingers of Chu Hen's left hand suddenly stretched out. As if taking something out of a cage, they directly plunged into the sword net that was wantonly intertwined. Hum! With a heavy sound of air waves, the sword aura that was comparable to the arrival of a storm suddenly sank into a state of stillness. Between the index and middle fingers of Chu Hen's left hand, an incomparably sharp sword blade was accurately and steadily caught between them. So fast, everyone's expression changed. It was unbelievable that such dense sword energy could stop a person's sword. Sen Yi was suspended in the air. The blade of his sword was only a few centimeters away from Chu Hen's throat, but he could not move the sword forward. You! Sen Yi was both shocked and angry. That's it? The corners of Chu Hen's mouth curled up slightly. His eyelids lifted, and then his arms slightly pulled to the left. Sen Yi was directly pulled over by an irresistible and overbearing force. Not good. Sen Yi was greatly shocked. He hurriedly released the hand that was holding the sword hilt. But it was also at this moment that Chu Hen flipped over and leaped above Sen Yi. With a somersault in the air, a heavy kick landed solidly on Sen Yi's back. Bang! Bang! The heavy muffled sound, along with the shaking of the ground, was less than half a second apart. Under numerous pairs of shocked gazes, Chu Hen directly stomped Sen Yi's entire body into the platform beneath him. Rubble exploded and the platform exploded. A circle of mighty aftershocks swept out. Countless deep cracks instantly covered the entire high platform. In the rapidly collapsing pit, Sen Yi was lying at Chu Hen's feet like a crippled dog. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, and his facial features were distorted. Blood continuously flowed from his mouth. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, a wave of air rose to the sky. Chapter 1374. Bang! The rubble exploded and cracks opened. Along with the collapse of the entire platform, the hearts of everyone present trembled faintly. In an instant there was a deathly silence both inside and outside the canyon, and dense disbelief surged on everyone's faces. One move. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, things happened too quickly, and no one could keep up with the rhythm at all. Sen Yi, the number one disciple of ruling sword sect, a genius on the stellar list, and a genuine Saint King Realm Master, was now trampled under Chu Hen's feet like a dead dog. Blood continuously flowed from his mouth and nose as he lay on the rubble, unable to move. The powerful and fierce sword momentum he had just displayed had instantly weakened to the extreme. My God! This guy? Everyone's eyes widened. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, no one would have imagined that Chu Hen was actually this strong. He Yen and Yang Su, who were about to follow behind Sen Yi, immediately stopped in their tracks. It was like a bridge that had collapsed. The shocking scene was like a torrent, assaulting their visual nerve. Although they all knew that Sun Yi was not Chu Hen's opponent, no one could have imagined that Sun Yi could not even withstand a single blow. In fact, it wasn't even a complete move. It was just a simple and direct heavy blow. Buzz, a wave of low and deep vibrations swept out. Chu Hen was imposing without being angry, and he fully displayed the bearing of a king. He didn't spare a glance at Sun Yi beneath his feet, and his deep and serene eyes that were like the boundless universe directly swept towards Chen Lu, who stood in the sky. Even in the face of the endless pressure of the 3 words War God Palace, Chu Hen still stood straight like a spear. The crushing power of Yang Su caused the atmosphere to become extremely tense. But at this moment, no one dared to step forward. Everyone's eyes were focused on the 2 people facing each other in the sky. One was like the sun in the sky, shining brilliantly. The other was like a star in the middle of the night, flickering in all directions. Chen Lu's eyes narrowed slightly as the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Hey, you've passed. You're qualified for me to personally take action. Before he finished speaking, the lady killer bird circling in the sky let out an unusually ear-piercing cry. The sharp melody was extremely penetrating, and it was like an invisible arrow that penetrated deep into the minds of everyone present. Chu Hen's face darkened slightly. He raised his hand and launched a soft palm energy towards Yi Yao, who was not far away. Retreat. Yi Yao was startled. Without any hesitation, she borrowed the strength of Chu Hen's palm to rush out together with Noni, the yin-yang beast. Crack, a series of cold and sharp noises burst out. The moment the 3 shadows left the ground, sharp thorns glowing with red light shot out from the ground. For example, there were wooden stakes scattered all over the ground. Each of them had a terrifying penetrative power. Low and hurried screams sounded from the rubble. Under countless trembling gazes, Sun Yi, who had fallen on the platform, was pierced by numerous sharp thorns, leaving not a single part of his body unscathed. Senior brother Seni, the expressions of the ruling Sword Gate disciples changed drastically. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Yang Su, He Yen, Qin Yen, Flower Snake, and the others all paled. Sun Yi died just like that? It was terrifying to be so careless and direct. Everyone from the ruling Sword Gate felt like the sky was about to turn dark. Their minds were blank. Chen Lu seemed to have done it unintentionally, but also seemed to have done it on purpose. It was as if in his eyes, Sun Ye's death was as insignificant as stepping on an ant. The ruling Sword Gate disciples, who were close to despair, dared not voice their anger at Chen Lu's actions. They were afraid of the War God Palace. They didn't even dare to say, "Damn it." Apart from glaring at them with bloodshot eyes, gnashing their teeth, and swallowing their anger, there was nothing they could do. Your reaction isn't bad, Chen Lu said indifferently. Humph. Chu Hen's pupils trembled faintly. With a low, strange hum, his eyes flickered with purple light. An icy aura spread out in the void. In the next second, a purple flaming cyclone appeared out of nowhere and swept toward Chen Lu and Yuan Yi with the force of a prairie fire. The counterattack that originated from Chu Hen was similarly straightforward and efficient. The evil flames were like a tide, covering the sky and covering the earth. Within them, there were also countless bolts of purple lightning that interweaved like wild pythons. In the blink of an eye, the incomparably violent purple lightning storm directly enveloped the 2, drowning them in an incomparably spectacular manner. But in the next instant, with a loud bang, the nebula exploded. Waves of air soared into the sky, and the purple storm was forcibly torn apart from the middle. A huge force surged in all directions, and the 2 returned to everyone's sight unscathed. Hiss. As expected of the war god Slaughter. His strength is really powerful. The battle should be over soon. That's natural. No matter how monstrous a rising star is, he is still far from the 5 saint kings of the War God Palace. the 5 Saint Kings of the War God Palace. For the people of the world, he was like a monument that they could only look up to. While everyone was shocked by the strength of Chen Lu's divine might, they also seemed to see Chu Hen's following fate, which was likely to be even more miserable than Sun Ye's. A vicious sneer appeared on the gloomy face of Yuan Yi. He looked coldly at Chu Hen and said, "Prepare to receive the most brutal revenge. Starting from you, none of those martial ancestor bastards can escape." A defeated opponent dares to speak so boldly. Chu Hen's eyes narrowed, and a violent divine thunder palm erupted from his hand. Crack! A sharp and rapid roar of thunder and lightning pierced through the sky, and a condensed beam of lightning tore through the sky, directly attacking Yuan Yi like an aurora. Sensing the destructive threat of this blow, Yuan Yi's expression changed slightly. He could clearly feel that after more than half a month, Chu Hen's strength had increased a lot. Humph! However, Yuan Yi had the powerful cultivation of the Third Order Saint King realm after all, and he, who was ranked 28th on the professional list, would not panic. The power of the celestial sacred body erupted. A mighty aura filled the sky, and a bright golden light surged out of his body. "I was too careless that day, but today I will teach you a lesson." At this moment, an obscure white light pattern floated between Chu Hen's eyebrows. Together with a strange spatial rhythm, the space around Yuan Yi quietly fell into an imperceptible state of distortion. Just as Yuan Yi was about to receive the purple beam of lightning head-on, a figure exuding a murderous aura suddenly intercepted him. A palm blade swaying with red light cut through the air like a shadow blade, directly cutting the beam of lightning in half. Bang! Starflowers bloomed like rain in the sky. A mighty and majestic aura raged like a gale. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Even Yuan Yi was stunned. He looked at Chen Lu in front of him in surprise. On the other hand, Chen Lu stared coldly at the young figure in front of him. Chapter 1375. So, he's also a Saint Rune Master. Chen Lu stared coldly at the young figure in front of him. His tone was slightly more surprised than before. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present was shocked. What? Saint Rune Master? How could it be? Immediately after, Yuan Yi, who was behind Chen Lu, discovered that a series of runes that flickered with a faint, gentle light were floating beside him. Every rune was brewing a particularly restless and shocking power. Yuan Yi's face turned pale, and a chill ran down his spine. The other people sitting there were also secretly shocked. In the end, everyone still underestimated Chu Hen's methods. If Dust Slaughter hadn't intercepted the beam of lightning, the runes on the side would have been detonated by the power of lightning. Under the impact of multiple forces, Yuan Yi, who had been focused on the front, would have lost half his life at the very least. "If I let you kill him so easily, where would I, Dust Slaughter, put my face?" Chen Lu said calmly. Chu Hen raised the corner of his mouth slightly, and a faint arrogant smile appeared on his face. "Then I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your face, what?" The hearts of everyone present were suddenly startled. As soon as Chu Hen's voice fell, the runes around Yuan Yi that had not cooled yet quietly fused together in the blink of an eye. Then, they transformed into a small, gorgeous rune formation. The light shone like a corner of a constellation in the night sky. The space faintly trembled, and a bleak and cold airflow spread out. In the next moment, everyone's pupils shrank. They saw a ghost-like figure suddenly standing behind Yuan Yi. Whoosh! Rapid cyclones filled the sky and covered the earth. Everyone who witnessed this scene was even more shocked. This is? What a profound displacement rune technique! Isn't it a little too fast? It's almost instantaneous. While everyone was shocked, Yuan Yi felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. An extremely dangerous signal surged from behind him. At this moment, he did not even have the courage to turn his head. The trembling in his heart made him almost unable to move. At the same time, a cold glint flashed in Dust Slaughter's eyes. With a whoosh, an afterimage swept past where he stood. Dust Slaughter set off a desolate aura and instantly flashed to the left of Chu Hen. "Heh, you won't be able to keep your life either." A cold smile blossomed on Dust Slaughter's face. He raised his right arm and swept it towards Chu Hen's head. A dense scarlet light revolved around Dust Slaughter's arm. His arm once again transformed into a sharp shadow blade that could cut through lightning. It was swift and fierce, like a blazing blade that could split everything in its path. Everyone's expressions changed again and again. Before he could recover from the shock of Chu Hen's displacement rune technique, Dust Murderer had already used the most effective method to restrain him. If Chu Hen chose to attack Yuan Yi, then Dust Slaughter's ferocious attack would also ferociously crash down. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the aureole behind. Just when everyone thought that Chu Hen would definitely retreat and defend, something unexpected happened. Chu Hen's aura was not chaotic at all. He did not even turn his head. Bang! A violent explosion shook the air. Along with a powerful and vigorous wave of air, a battered figure covered in blood drew a straight line in the air. Then, he smashed heavily into a rooftop in the canyon below. Bang! It smashed down solidly, and countless deep net-like cracks immediately appeared on the huge rooftop. The stone tiles on the rooftop shattered inch by inch and rapidly caved in. "It's Yuan Yi!" Everyone was shocked. Yuan Yi was covered in blood. The clothes on his back had been shredded by the fierce impact. Blood flowed from his mouth and nose. Similar to Sun Yi, he did not even have the ability to get up. There was no time to be shocked. Everyone's gazes immediately turned to the sky. In the end, Chu Hen did not let Yuan Yi go. This meant that Dust Slaughter was still standing next to him. The powerful energy ripples caused the surrounding space to distort unstably. The rapid airflow caused the wind to stack up in all directions. Everyone's pupils faintly narrowed, only to see that the two people in the sky were still standing in their original positions. Dust Slaughter's palm, which was as sharp as a plow blade, firmly stopped 10 centimeters away from Chu Hen's head. A palm surrounded by purple lightning arcs grabbed Dust Slaughter's arm like the claws of a ferocious beast. "This guy?" Hiss! Countless people couldn't help but gasp at the sight of this. No one had expected that Chu Hen could block Dust Slaughter's attack and injure Yuan Yi at the same time. What kind of ability was this? "I'm sorry. I've embarrassed you," Chu Hen said calmly. He slowly turned his head, his eyes flashing with demonic purple lightning. Dust Slaughter laughed. His laughter was especially sinister. "I've embarrassed myself and you've lost your life." "It's not a loss at all." "Oh? Is that so?" Chu Hen raised his brows and stared at Dust Slaughter's mocking gaze with a peerlessly domineering gaze. "What if you lose your life as well?" Every word was like a pearl, shocking the mind. Everyone in the valley below felt their blood boil restlessly as they listened to the two's conversation. It was like the gaze of a king, making them feel ashamed of their insignificance. In particular, Chu Hen's words truly made everyone feel a proud provocation. What interesting last words. Dust Slaughter's eyes shone with a cold light as soon as he finished speaking. At the same time, a thick cloud of blood-colored steam surged out of his body. He was like a wild beast that had opened its eyes and emitted a monstrous murderous aura. The 5 fingers that grabbed Dust Slaughter's arm were forcefully shaken off. The corners of Chu Hen's eyes narrowed slightly. Lightning gathered in his palm, and arcs of electricity overflowed like dragons. Chu Hen's left hand's 5 fingers closed together. Surrounded by lightning, it was like an aurora blade that directly stabbed at Dust Slaughter's throat. Facing Chu Hen's lightning-fast attacks, Dust Slaughter's eyes revealed endless viciousness. "Fighting in close combat in front of me? You're thinking too much." With that, Dust Slaughter stretched out a palm. Extremely powerful True Yuan rotated in his palm. Rumble, an explosion sounded like rocks cracking. The tip of Chu Hen's finger was like a sharp blade, directly piercing through the solid true yuan palm energy in Dust Slaughter's palm. The extremely penetrating force pierced forward. Dust Slaughter's palm clearly trembled. Although he had blocked Chu Hen's attack, a wisp of blood immediately spurted out from his palm. What? He could actually injure Dust Slaughter? Everyone present widened their eyes in disbelief. Just how much destructive power did Chu Hen's attack contain? Yang Su, He Yen, Qin Yen, and the others couldn't help but turn pale. If it had been any one of them, Chu Hen's lightning spike would have likely pierced through their palms and throat. You actually made me bleed. You're a little unforgivable. Dust Slaughter's expression was fierce. His 5 fingers came together and firmly grasped Chu Hen's palm. At the same time, he quickly raised his other hand above his head, and an abnormally sharp bone spike grew out of his palm. Whoosh! Dust Slaughter gripped the bone spike in his palm and pierced through the air, directly stabbing at Chu Hen's head. Die! Ruthless and murderous. The cold and vicious aura caused everyone's hearts to tremble. Chu Hen's pupils rapidly reflected the incoming bone spike. In the blink of an eye, Chu Hen's figure leaned to the left, and the incomparably sharp bone spike practically brushed past Chu Hen's right cheek. The sharp aura attached to the bone spike cut through the surface of his skin like a blade, and a faint line of blood seeped out from the corner of Chu Hen's face. Big brother Chu Hen? Outside the battlefield, Yi Yao's pretty face changed slightly, revealing a look of worry. However, Chu Hen didn't care about the pain on his cheek at all. He didn't even frown. As he dodged the bone spike, he took advantage of the opportunity to break free from Dust Slaughter's grasp. Then, he spun to the side, his back facing Dust Slaughter's right. Whoosh! A sharp sword hum rang out, and the formless Tharch blade appeared in Chu Hen's hand. Chu Hen gripped the sword in a reverse grip and directly stabbed it behind him, aiming for Dust Slaughter's right rib. Close combat focused on reaction and technique. Every move of the two could be said to be fatal. Under numerous shocked gazes, the formless Tharch blade in Chu Hen's hand passed under his armpit and then stabbed into Dust Slaughter's left rib. How could this be? Chapter 1376. Whoosh! The resonant hum of the sword shook everyone's heartstrings. Under everyone's astonished gazes, Chu Hen turned around and swung his sword in the opposite direction. The formless Emperor blade pierced Chen Lu's armpit and pierced Chen Lu's left rib. It was an unconventional move. The extraordinary and incomparably swift sword move made everyone gasp in surprise. However, what was surprising was that Chen Lu's face didn't show any signs of pain. He didn't even frown. Not a bad move, but it's a pity that it's useless. Everyone was shocked. Only then did they realize that Chu Hen's sword hadn't penetrated much into Chen Lu's left rib. Even the tip of the sword was outside. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Hen's eyes darkened. Then, he leaped into the air and immediately flashed away. At the same time, Dust Slaughter's left rib suddenly bulged. With a crack, a dozen or so sharp bone spikes suddenly broke through his flesh and skin, exposing themselves to the air. Whoa! What's that? Everyone was shocked. It was as if they had seen an unbearably terrifying scene. Every bone spike was as sharp as a blade. Moreover, they were completely blood-red and emitted a horrifying, bewitching sharpness. As Chu Hen dodged forward, he glanced behind him from the corner of his eye. He couldn't help but be moved when he saw the bone spikes that had directly burst out of Chen Lu's body. Hey, where's your fear? I urgently want to sense its existence. Chen Lu's face revealed a trace of a sinister smile. He leapt up and quickly rushed towards Chu Hen. As he moved, the red bone spike in Chen Lu's left palm rapidly grew and instantly turned into a spike that was 2 to 3 meters long. Chen Lu raised his arm, and the bone spike shot towards Chu Hen's back with endless penetrative sharpness. Sensing the danger behind him, Chu Hen didn't panic. He immediately turned around and swung the formless Emperor blade horizontally, splitting the bone spike apart. In the next instant, Chun Lu, who had closed in, suddenly grabbed one of the bone spikes under his rib with his right hand. Then, he exerted force in his arm and forcibly pulled the bone spike out of his right rib. The especially horrifying scene made everyone feel extremely uncomfortable. Monster! Everyone present couldn't help but curse in their hearts. Crack! The bone spear that had been pulled out immediately turned into a deadly weapon in Chun Lu's hand. He held the bone spear and quickly stabbed it towards Chu Hen's chest. The two continuous attacks more or less caused Chu Hen to be a little unprepared. He didn't understand Dust Murderer at all. He didn't know his opponent's moves at all. In a hurry, Chu Hen once again chose to retreat. Whoosh! Dust Slaughter's bone spear missed for the second time, but in the next second, he loosened his right hand's fingers, and the bone spear shot out like an arrow from a bow. Chu Hen's pupils shrank, and he immediately placed the formless Tharch blade in front of him. Ding! The sharp tip of the bone spur firmly hit the body of the formless Emperor blade. Accompanied by a powerful shock wave, Chu Hen felt his arm go slightly numb. A fierce hidden force flowed into his body through the sword hilt, causing his blood and chi to become slightly restless. Dust Slaughter's aura rose again. He raised his hand to catch the bone spear that had bounced back and closed the distance between them as fast as he could. The bone spear danced again, this time horizontally swinging towards Chu Hen's head. However, Chu Hen's reaction speed was also extremely fast. He ducked and dodged the opponent's attack. Dust Slaughter was also merciless. Every move was fatal, and every attack was aimed at Chu Hen's body's vital point. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the void, the two people's close combat could be said to be fast and fierce, and their attacks were swift and fierce. One attack and one defense could be said to be so tight that one didn't even have a chance to breathe. Dust Slaughter held the blood-colored bone spear with both hands as if he was brandishing a sharp thorn blade. Compared to the sharp sword in Chu Hen's hand, he clearly had an advantage. What a surprise! He actually dared to fight Dust Slaughter in close combat. Rumor has it that the god of war, Dust Slaughter himself, is a killing weapon. Now that I see it, it's not false at all. Who says it isn't? Every bone blade and thorn that grows out of his body is comparable to the sharpness of a divine artifact. Not to mention ordinary people, even we will die if we touch it. Especially in close-range combat, no one can get close to him. Why is he so terrifying? The limit of Dust Slaughter's bloodline, the sacred body of harsh bones. Sacred body of harsh bones. Everyone's expressions changed when they heard those words. This was an extremely rare sacred body bloodline. Those with this sacred body didn't have jade-white bones like ordinary people. Instead, their bones were red, as if they had been soaked in blood. Moreover, it contained extremely powerful bloodline power. This kind of power could allow their bones to break out of their bodies at any time and become fatal killing weapons. Anyone who possessed the sacred body of fierce bones was known as a natural killer. It was as if they were born for killing. There was a murderous aura in their bones that far surpassed ordinary people. God of War, Dust Slaughter. He became famous for killing. Dust Slaughter often slaughtered many sects and forces by himself. Moreover, the people who died at his hands were mostly killed by the bone blades that grew out of his body. One could imagine how terrifying he was. The continuous close combat made everyone present unavoidably break out in cold sweat for Chu Hen. If he was the slightest bit careless, Dust Slaughter's blood-like bone spikes would mercilessly slice through his opponent's throat. It was terrifying. Dust Slaughter's close combat is too strong. Chu Hen is completely suppressed. He won't be able to hold on for long. The sacred body of harsh bones is terrifying enough. More importantly, Dust Slaughter's realm cultivation is much higher than his opponent's. It seems that the martial ancestor realm is just a flash in the pan. Bang! Ding! Sparks flew everywhere. Sharp swords and bone blades collided one after another, causing a series of light and shadow to explode. Suddenly, the tendons and flesh around Dust Slaughter's spine swelled up like dragons. Gotcha, accompanied by the sound of bones rubbing against each other. His spine shot out like a spear from a poisonous scorpion's tail. The blood-red spear quickly swayed, and then dove down from above, attacking Chu-Hen. Monster! He was simply a horrifying monster. Everyone looked at Dust Slaughter as if he was a complete freak. Bang! Chu-Hen repeatedly brandished his longsword. A fierce and powerful force came crashing down, and the true essence covering the sword shattered like a bubble. At the same time, the bone spurs in Chun Lu's palm came stabbing out from the left and right. Let's see how long you can last. As soon as his opponent finished speaking, a hint of fear flashed through Chu-Hen's eyes. He brandished the sword in his hand and stabbed forward. Everyone below was startled. No, the sword is too short. It can't hit Dust Slaughter. Even if the sword chi can reach it, its power can't compare to Dust Slaughter's. Looks like he's starting to get anxious. He's planning on fighting with his life. Fighting with his life? Is that possible? Every inch of Dust Slaughter's body can be said to be made up of bones. Even ordinary divine weapons can't hurt him. Whoosh! However, at this moment, the black rune sword in Chu-Hen's hand suddenly flowed with countless black rune lights in the shape of light vines. The vines flickered and intersected like tassels, swimming around the sword. In an instant, the body of the black rune longsword showed an illusory distortion. Following that, the body of the sword rapidly lengthened. The sharp edge of the longsword surged out, and the longsword immediately turned into a cold and threatening dragon's pine frost spear. What? Everyone's eyes widened, and thick disbelief surged into their eyes. The weapon changed form? How can this be? Chapter 1377. How is this possible? The weapon actually changed its form? A steady and piercingly cold aura surged out. Looking at the cold spear that was instantly transformed from a black rune longsword, everyone's faces were filled with astonishment. Roar! As soon as the spear appeared, a ferocious creature's howl swept through the sky. The wind and clouds in the sky surged and waves of air surged. A ferocious and domineering ancient lizard dragon with a pair of wings on its back appeared behind Chu-Hen. It was like a summoned creature, displaying its supreme ferocious might. Bang! In the next moment, the cold spear that was covered in black runes shot down and struck Chun Lu's chest with the might of the army destroyer. A deafening sound reverberated and the aftermath surged. The cold spear's might could destroy 3 armies. The violent impact that was comparable to a mountain was concentrated on Chun Lu's body. The latter's body shook violently, and the bone spear in his hand was forcefully sent flying before it could even touch Chu-Hen. As he flew backwards, everyone could clearly see Chun Lu's chest rapidly cave in, and the outline of his broken bones could be vaguely seen. Oh my God! Everyone inside and outside the canyon frowned. Their faces were filled with fear. How terrifying was the power of Chu-Hen's attack! What was even more shocking was the instantaneous change of the weapon in his hand. What weapon is that? Although its form has changed, its aura hasn't. Formless. Imperial blade. A trembling voice came from the crowd. What? The formless Imperial blade, that's ranked 16th on the divine weapon ranking? Really? It's absolutely true. Back then, I was in the formless sky tomb and saw Chu-Hen seize the formless Imperial blade with my own eyes. Moreover, in the process of seizing the formless Imperial blade, Lei Yuan and the others from the Thunderbolt Sacred Clan died in his hands. He's right. I was also in the formless sky tomb at that time. Whoosh! In an instant, the crowd burst into an uproar. Even Firmament Pavilion's Yang Su, Profound Sun Palace's He Yen, and the others paled. Just how many geniuses on the Wind Cloud list did Chu-Hen kill? Isn't he too ruthless? Damn thing! Yang Su clenched his fists tightly. His heart was filled with both hatred and trepidation. They had to admit that Chu-Hen's existence was a great threat to them. Even to the entire profound Yang Palace and the heaven-condensing pavilion, he was a threat that could not be ignored. If he was allowed to continue growing, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Don't worry," He Yen said gloomily, "he definitely won't live past today." Yang Su nodded with a fierce look on his face. A powerful chi flow charged at Dust Murderer like a pillar of wind. Dust Murderer's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. "What a formless Emperor blade! But if you think you can defeat me like this, then you're gravely mistaken." Crack! The sound of bones rubbing against each other sounded like beans rolling in a bamboo tube. Dust Slaughter's face was hideous, and his sunken chest suddenly bulged out. His bones seemed to be moving, and his skin and flesh bulged. It was extremely uncomfortable to look at. Rip! Then, blood-red bone spikes burst out of Dust Slaughter's chest one after another. The spikes were as sharp as sea urchins, terrifying and dangerous. Chu Hen's eyes narrowed, and he subconsciously tightened his grip on his spear. "What a disgusting thing!" Dust Slaughter sneered. At the same time, dozens of bony spikes burst out of his left rib. Covered in thorns and blades, Dust Slaughter had transformed into a terrifying monster that looked neither human nor ghost. "I live for slaughter. You're just fish on my chopping block." A monstrous murderous aura surged out of Dust Slaughter's body. Blood-red steam revolved around his body like a storm whirlpool. Dust Slaughter's speed exploded after he finished speaking, and he charged at Chu Hen with thousands of bony spikes in hand. Humph! Chu Hen's eyes turned cold, and the black dragon's pine frost spear in his hand blossomed with a myriad of extravagance. The ancient runes on the spear flickered, and at the same time, countless violent purple arcs of lightning swam up. The spear's momentum was shocking, and it was like a dragon. Dust Slaughter's entire body was covered in bony spikes, and he was like a life-reaping weapon. However, Chu Hen, who was holding the spear, was clearly much calmer than before. Formless Tharch Blade. It was shapeless and formless, and it had myriad forms. It had no fixed form, and it could change into myriad forms according to its master's will. Compared to a sharp sword, a spear was slightly weaker in terms of agility, but in close combat it was an inch longer, an inch stronger. Especially when facing a monster like Dust Slaughter, whose entire body was a weapon, distance control was especially important. Bang! Boom! Dust Slaughter's attacks were swift and fierce, and every move was aimed at vital points. The momentum of Chu Hen's spear was like a storm. The dazzling spear radiance was like a storm that stirred up the heavens. Facing Chen Lu's crazy harvesting and slashing, not only did he not fall into the slightest disadvantage, he instead performed exceptionally well in both offense and defense. Without a doubt, the surprising appearance of Formless Tharch Blade caused everyone's hearts to tremble again. If an ordinary divine weapon was unable to harm Dust Slaughter, then Formless Tharch Blade caused everyone to be a bit more doubtful. He actually obtained Formless Tharch Blade. No wonder the Lingyun sect lost so miserably. Shh. Lower your voice, Yuan Yi is still breathing. I'm just saying. Although the decline and fall of the Lingyun sect had become an irreversible trend, just the fact that Yuan Yi had come with Dust Slaughter was enough to make everyone fearful. The prestige of the War God Palace was enough to support the other party. At this moment, Yuan Yi was still lying miserably in a pile of rubble. It was hard to determine how serious his injuries were, but from his incomparably gloomy eyes, one could see how much resentment and hatred he had in his heart. "You won't live. And those bastards from the martial sect, I will torture them to death one by one." On the side of Huanyu Palace, Flower Snake's expression was incomparably complicated. She clearly remembered that back in the North Chuan ice region, Chu Hen's cultivation was far less powerful than it was now. Looking at Sun Yi, who had been dead for a long time and was badly mutilated, she felt that his death was really vexing. With Sin Ye's death, the ruling Sword Gate's disciples all mourned. In particular, Sin Yi did not die at Chu Hen's hands. The final fatal blow was delivered by Chen Lu. The other disciples of the ruling sword gate did not know what to do next. They could not leave. They could not stay. They did not even know whether Chu Hen or Chen Lu was the real target of hatred. But no matter which side it was, with just the few of them, there was no need to talk about revenge. The spear rained down and the 1,000 bones were like thorns. Boom! It was another incomparably fierce head-on collision. The incomparably sharp bone spurs directly pierced through the piercingly cold spear light. Together with the venomous scorpion stinger that grew out of Chen Lu's spine, they swung down, stabbing towards Chu Hen's vitals. Facing another round of attacks, Chu Hen swept his cold spear, and a solid ancient lizard dragon phantom drilled out of the spear light. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, roaring as it charged out. Child's play. Chen Lu revealed a look of disdain. The bone spurs and the venomous scorpion stinger in his palms both erupted with a rich scarlet light. The powerful attack directly pierced through the lizard dragon phantom and tore it to pieces. At this moment, Chu Hen tapped the air with the tip of his foot and somersaulted in the air, dodging the bone spurs. At the same time, he immediately flashed over Chen Lu's head and behind him. In the next instant, Chu Hen directly swooped down towards Chen Lu's back. Sizzle, a series of incomparably berserk purple lightning quickly twined around the long spear. At the same time, the corners of Chu Hen's eyes slightly trembled. His two palms that were holding the long spear condensed, and after the purple lightning, countless dark green lightning arcs once again swam out. Green flames were burning amidst the relatively cold electric arc. It was very strange. Is that the Netherfire heavenly lightning? It can't be wrong. It's definitely the Thunder Saint Clan's Thunder Abyss's Netherfire heavenly lightning. This guy, he actually? Among the people present, there was no lack of people who had gone to the formless sky tomb. During the battle between Chu Hen and Thunder Abyss, they had personally witnessed the fierce battle between the Black Kshetra Divine Lightning and the Netherfire Heavenly Lightning. Now, with a glance, they could determine that the dark green lightning was a divine item unique to Thunder Abyss. Everyone knew that the Underworld Fire Heavenly Lightning was created by fusing Thunder Abyss's bloodline with the 1,000-year Underworld Fire of the Shadow Abyss. It had the lethality of lightning and the burning power of Underworld Fire. Now, Thunder Abyss was long dead, and even the divine item he was so proud of had been snatched away. Everyone couldn't help but feel a little sad. Crack. Under countless astonished gazes, the purple-black Kshetra Divine Lightning and the green Netherfire Heavenly Lightning were like two intertwining lightning pythons, quickly wrapping around the spear. The spear light rapidly expanded, instantly turning into a lightning halberd that was more than 10 meters long. Under the rain of lightning and fire, Chen Lu, who hadn't had time to turn around, directly faced his back to Chu Hen. A cold glint flashed in Chu Hen's eyes. This spear was like the lightning that pierced through the chaotic world. It was unstoppable. Even if your entire body is covered in armor, it'll still be difficult for you to withstand my lightning strike. Break! Everyone's pupils shrank to the size of needles. The dazzling lightning bloomed like a dazzling radiance, illuminating the sky. Chapter 1378. Clang, light blossomed in the sky, and arcs of lightning intersected. The two types of lightning that covered the cold spear interwove like pythons. For example, the thunder god's spike that pierced through the chaotic world pierced into Dust Murderer's back with unstoppable force. The starry rain of fire splashed everywhere, and a gap was torn in Dust Murderer's impenetrable defense. The thunder god's spike, which could pierce through everything, exploded with a tremendous force. It pierced through Dust Murderer's bones and internal organs. Under countless shocked gazes, the bones on Dust Slaughter's back shattered one after another. Wherever the blade of the spear passed, cracks would rapidly open up. Blood mixed with minced flesh flew everywhere. Unusual red bone fragments danced like crystal shards. Hiss! Heavens! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The scene in front of them made their blood run cold, and their scalps go numb. Ruthless. The power of Chu Hen's spear couldn't be more ruthless. Yang Su, He Yen, Qing Yen, Flower Snake, and the others felt a chill run down their spines. Their brows furrowed like two dead silkworms. One had to know that this person was Dust Murderer, one of the Palace of War God's 5 Saint Kings. He was called the Killing God of War, and ranked 19th on the Wind Cloud list. Just how strong is this person? Huan Yu Palace's Qing Yen bit her lip and muttered. On the other side, Yi Yao's face relaxed a little. Previously, she was worried if Chu Hen could deal with Dust Murderer's attack. Now, she was much more relaxed. Zzzt. The cold spear, flickering with lightning, emitted a destructive aura. It was like a long nail that firmly pinned Dust Murderer in the air. Dust Murderer couldn't even budge. Dust Murderer's body, which was covered in bone spikes, trembled incessantly. Heh. I almost died. Then, the corners of Dust Murderer's mouth drew back, and he actually smiled. His white teeth and cold smile were like a demon's, causing people's hearts to palpitate inexplicably. Screech. At the same time, the lady killer bird circling in the sky let out an ear-piercing screech. An indescribable fear surged in everyone's hearts. Yi Yao's expression changed slightly, and her heart, which had just relaxed a little, tensed up. It's been a very long time since someone's been able to injure me. Ha 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 ha. Dust Slaughter roared with laughter. At the same time, the blood vessels and tendons on his face, forehead, and all over his body bulged in unison. His gaze became even more ruthless and ferocious, and a terrifying murderous aura was like lava that was rapidly brewing in a volcano. The corner of Chu Hen's eyes narrowed slightly. Then, he discovered that the spear in his hand was firmly stuck in his opponent's back. Hee hee. Dust Slaughter laughed maniacally. What a wondrous pain! I'm willing to use all my strength to kill you. Kill! The two cold and fierce words were like a sharp knife, stabbing into everyone's eardrums. Boom! In the next moment, a monstrous, evil, and murderous aura poured out of Dust Slaughter's body. The vast, blood-colored steam was like a river that had broken through a dam. Chu Hen's pupils constricted. He saw the muscles on Dust Slaughter's back move rapidly. In that instant, red bone spikes shot out of his body. The bone spikes extended extremely quickly, instantly arriving in front of Chu Hen. He didn't have time to pull out the dragon's pine spear formed by the formless Tharch blade from Dust Slaughter's back. The sharp bone spikes had already rushed in front of him. In this moment, Chu Hen could only let go of the formless Tharch blade and quickly glide backwards. However, this time, the bone spikes that grew out of Dust Slaughter's body didn't stop. Instead, they chased after Chu Hen as they traversed through the sky. Hee. Dust Slaughter's body trembled, and the smile on his face became more and more sinister. I'll let you see what the true, sadistic killing technique is. Screech. The Lady Slayer in the sky became increasingly excited. Its piercing screech echoed in all directions and spread for thousands of kilometers. Crack. Following this, sharp bone spikes also grew out of Dust Slaughter's back and below his ribs. A series of ice-cold bone spikes burst out of his body, accompanied by a sudden and majestic evil chi. Bloody death dance. Dust Slaughter shouted fiercely. His voice was like thunder. Crack. Hiss. In that instant, countless bone spikes that emitted a powerful murderous aura burst forth one after another. They were like branches that rapidly separated from tree trunk. Each branch gave birth to countless more branches. 1 became 10, and 10 became 100. The bone spikes that were constantly extending spread out like branches and leaves, covering the sky and covering the earth in all directions. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The rapidly diverging bone spurs transformed into incomparably sharp blades, unceasingly attacking Chu Hen from top, bottom, left, and right. Chu Hen continuously dodged and dodged, his eyes filled with a trace of coldness. The attacking bone spikes extended extremely quickly, and their penetrative power was extremely strong. The range that Chu-Hen could move became smaller and smaller. Under the continuous attacks of the countless branching bone spikes, Chu-Hen's position of movement was constantly inching closer to the ground. Everyone inside and outside the canyon was alarmed. They all retreated to a relatively safe area. Soon, Chu-Hen was forced to the ground. Following that, the bone spikes and thorns that covered the sky and covered the earth came crashing down. Whoosh! 1 second after Chu-Hen dodged, dozens of bone spikes stabbed deep into the ground where he had just been. The terrifying penetrative power caused rocks to shatter and the earth to split apart. In the blink of an eye, a particularly spectacular scene appeared in front of everyone. Dense bone spikes crisscrossed each other like an incomparably huge blood-colored bird's nest. A dense bloody aura filled the sky and earth. At the top of the bird's nest, Dust Slaughter, who was covered in bone spikes, looked like a monster from hell. He had used every bone in his body to create a terrifying giant cage. At this moment, Chu-Hen was like a flea in a giant bird's nest. Although his reactions were especially fast, the increasingly dense bone spikes constantly sealed off his range of movement. He. This is a move that can kill tens of thousands of people in one go. How fortunate and proud you should be to use it on yourself today. Ha 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 ha. Dust Slaughter's laughter was extremely terrifying. Bloody Death Dance. It was a beautiful and dangerous name. At this moment, everyone finally knew how the sects and forces that had been destroyed by Dust Slaughter had fallen. They seemed to see the despair in the eyes of those sects and forces in this blood-colored bird's nest. They were killed by bone spikes amidst helplessness and fear. Oh my God! This guy is simply a monster! He who says otherwise? Bang bang bang! The bone spikes that kept stabbing into the ground were like sharp spears and arrows. The huge blood-colored bird's nest quickly covered more than half the space in the canyon. Ancient buildings were pierced from top to bottom by extremely long bone spikes, but they still stood firmly. Chu-Hen was getting further and further away from Dust Slaughter. Moreover, there were countless crisscrossing bone spikes between them. It was extremely difficult to attack Dust Slaughter. In everyone's opinion, Chu-Hen had already fallen into an irreversible dead end. Soon, the space around Chu-Hen had shrunk to less than the size of a room. He fused with the earth. Accompanied by Dust Slaughter's deranged laughter, thousands of blood-colored bone spikes pierced down from all directions from different angles. Every bone spike was abnormally sharp and exuded the threat of destruction. Chu-Hen's pupils rapidly shrank. Bang! In the next instant, the ground cracked and rocks exploded. Along with the rapidly expanding giant pit, Chu-Hen was like a weak butterfly, directly embedded into the ground by countless bone spikes. The ground collapsed inch by inch, and the terrifying bone spikes pierced dozens of meters deep. It was like a terrible seal that could never be broken. It firmly nailed Chu-Hen into the ground. Big brother Chu-Hen? Yi Yao's expression changed greatly, and her small face instantly turned as white as a sheet. Enyang Beast Noni also let out a low whimper. At the same time, everyone else was terrified by the scene in front of them. Dust Slaughter's methods were even more terrifying than the rumors said. However, this ending was also within everyone's expectations. They didn't think there was anything wrong with it. He was a rising star of the martial sect, and one of the 5 saint kings of the War God Palace. There was no comparison. Although there was an interlude, the ending is still set. Profound Sun Palace's He Yan's expression relaxed slightly, and his eyes meaningfully glanced at heaven-gathering Pavilion's Yang Su. The latter also smiled disdainfully. What a pity! With such monstrous talent, he would definitely be in the top 10 of the Wind Cloud list in the future. It was a pity, but it was more of a contented feeling. Chapter 1379. Buzz, the world lost its color and the wind was cold. In the huge canyon, everyone's faces were filled with shock that came from the depths of their hearts. Looking at the huge blood-colored bird's nest that shrouded the sky, everyone's heart trembled. Bloody death, heavenly dance. This was a killing move that could kill tens of thousands of people, and even destroy a sect. Witnessing it with their own eyes was even more impactful than the rumors. This was especially the case when they saw Chu Hen, who was deeply embedded into the ground by countless bone spikes. Everyone could not help but become increasingly aware. The War God Palace was indeed an undefeatable existence. Profound Yang Palace and even Heaven Pavilion's side were already secretly delighted. Chu Hen's death was no less than getting rid of a huge problem for them. A bunch of people who take pleasure in other people's misfortune. On Huan Yuhal's side, Flower Snake coldly glanced at Yang Su, He Yen, and the others with a disdainful expression. Flower Snake was one of the first to come into contact with Chu Hen. To be honest, after witnessing the change in Bei Chuan Ice Domain, Flower Snake felt more pity than the others. Of course, it was only a bit of pity. Chu Hen's defeat was not a bad thing for Huan Yuhal. I've been waiting for this day. It's a pity that I can't personally kill you to avenge my brother. Ten-feathered demon Blade Li Yenqing and Fatal Elegance Lu Weihua were both moved. Their faces were filled with more complacent sneers than the others. All of a sudden, the ground shook. Just at this time, rumble. An incomparably heavy muffled sound rang out. The area where Chu Hen was embedded into the ground suddenly and rapidly burst open. What? Everyone's hearts trembled. Chu Hen did not die. One had to know that Chun Lu's venomous bone sacred physique was always successful, and its destructive power was comparable to a divine weapon. Chu Hen had just been hit by hundreds of bone spikes. Even if he did not die, he would have lost half his life. How could he still release such a powerful aura? Every inch of rubble exploded into powder, and a purple aurora blossomed wantonly. For example, the stars that had exploded in the ground. Roar, along with the roar that resounded in all directions, a powerful and mighty shockwave swept out, shattering bone spikes one after another. It was like a withered tree branch being attacked by gravity. Immediately after, sharp dragon claws broke through the ground, and under the shocked gazes of countless people present, a giant dragon skeleton without flesh, scales, or armor rose up, releasing a monstrous ferocious aura. This is? Dragon skeleton? Everyone frowned deeply, their faces filled with shock. This ferocious creature, which was only left with its skeleton, had the aura of a true dragon, especially the two balls of flame-shaped light in its eye sockets, which showed the supreme divine might of an ancient ferocious creature. Where did this guy get the true dragon skeleton from? On one side, there was a blood-red bird's nest made of bone spurs, and on the other side, there was a real dragon's skeleton. For example, the tyrannical dragon bones of the zombies broke through the bone spikes one after another with the momentum of tearing apart the sky net, breaking through the layers of shackles and getting into the predicament. In the crater of rubble under the dragon's skeleton, Chu Hen's figure was an incongruous contrast with the scene before him. From afar, several obvious wounds could be seen on Chu Hen's body, but his aura was still fierce. Violent purple lightning circled around his body, and the might that flashed in his eyes was like the flames in the dragon skeleton's eye sockets. Under the tyrannical impact of the giant dragon's skeleton, a hole was quickly broken through the blood-red bird's nest. "You're really surprising me more and more." Thick murderous intent appeared on Dust Slaughter's face. He was completely determined to kill Chu Hen. "But you're dreaming if you think you can break through my bloody death heavenly dance with just this thing." Heavenly dance, Slaughter. As soon as Dust Slaughter finished speaking, an ice-cold, destructive aura surged from the ground where Chu Hen was. Chu Hen's eyes darkened, and without a word, he quickly leaped off the ground. Bang, bang, bang! In an instant, countless sharp spikes surged out of the ground. The scarlet spikes were like the bone spikes that came out of Dust Slaughter's body. They were divided into 10, then 100. They spread like a three-dimensional spider web. At the same time, The bone spikes that were broken by the giant dragon skeleton grew back like a gecko's broken tail. Bone spikes attacked from all directions, and Chu Hen dodged and retreated between the cracks. Because the attack of the bone spikes was too concentrated, Chu Hen flashed to the bottom of the dragon's head. The dragon's two skeletal claws, one on the left and one on the right, held Chu Hen in the middle, blocking the attack of the bone spike. However, the blood-colored bone spurs that were constantly pressing down could be said to be extremely sturdy. They were like long poles that pierced through the earth and the sky, respectively passing through the various cracks on the giant dragon's skeleton before firmly locking it in place. Roar! The dragon skeleton's ferocious might decreased after being stuck by countless sharp and slender bone spikes. Its enormous body became a disadvantage, and it couldn't exert any strength. The blood cage trapped a giant beast. Seeing the increasingly shocking scene before them, everyone's understanding of dust slaughter was refreshed. This person was too terrifying. Pointless resistance. You can end it now. Dust Slaughter's words were like a death sentence. With that, Dust Slaughter raised his spike-covered hands and extended them towards the giant dragon skeleton. Crack! Countless spikes began to pass through the cracks in the dragon's claws and attack Chu Hen. Hee, as I said before, I'll lose face and you'll lose your life, A heart-palpitating aura of death enveloped the area. The dense bone spikes grew even faster, sweeping up endless murderous intent as they descended. Noni, hurry up and help Brother Chu Hen. At the same time, Yi Yao had already flown out with Noni, the Yinyang beast, towards the giant blood-red bird nest. However, to everyone else she was just adding to her life. However, just as the fatal bone spikes were about to pierce through the dragon's claws, an enormous shockwave suddenly erupted like a tsunami. Rumble! The mountains and rivers changed, and huge waves rose to the sky. An enormous pillar of light shot into the sky without any warning from the center of the blood-red bird nest. Bang! Bang! The terrifying power of an earth-shattering meteor suddenly exploded. The ground cracked, rocks turned to dust, and red bone spikes broke one after another, exploding into countless pieces. What's going on? Everyone was shocked. The people from Heaven Gathering Pavilion, Profound Yang Palace, Huanyu Hall, Ruling Sword Gate, and the other factions all widened their eyes. Their faces were filled with deep disbelief. In the center of the blood-red bird nest, power was like a tsunami. Runes and secret scrolls flashed, covering the sky and covering the earth. The incomparably chaotic storm of power was filled with thunder, flames, hurricanes, light, and a series of other complicated energies. Many powers intertwined together, and the destructive power that leaked out was extremely terrifying. Bang, bang, bang! Like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, the bone fragments that filled the sky were like shattered crystals, breaking layer by layer. The dense shackles of the heavens net collapsed in an instant, shattering into pieces. The mighty storm of power engulfed the entire canyon. One ancient building after another was swept to the ground, and one mountain slope after another suddenly collapsed. It's the power of runes. A cry of surprise came from the crowd. What? Pairs of eyes were still filled with shock. Under the interweaving runes that filled the sky, an extravagant rune array that spanned hundreds of feet suddenly appeared on the ground. It really is the rune technique, but how did he do it? Everyone knew that the more powerful the power of runes, the more time was needed to set them up. From the beginning until now, Chu Hen had been in a passive state. Not to mention setting up a rune array, he did not even have the chance to release a martial skill to counterattack. Moreover, the power of this rune array directly overturned the entire blood-red bird nest, and Chu Hen did not have the time to complete it at all. The frantic and rapid power of runes swept up a hurricane. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the dazzling rune array that shook the heavens and the earth. In the storm of power that engulfed the 9 heavens, there was actually a figure with a strange appearance that seemed like a human but not a beast. That is, the monster's body was like a tree trunk, but its limbs were like beast claws. Its eyes were filled with golden light, and its mouth was slightly opened, emitting a dark aura like an abyss. That could it be? What is it? Rune beast?